You are now entering Maximum Driftcast, the only drifting podcast hosted by a Spanish soccer mom, a 30-year-old silver-haired fox going on 60, and finally, a 200-pound bowl of spaghetti with chimichanga arms.
The champions, we are the champions.
That is right. That is correct. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back on another episode of Maximum Driftcast.
Back at it again.
That's right. Welcome, boys.
And we're joined by Paco in the control room. He has engulfed Big Balls Brian's entire body, and now they are one. They have merged. There's some sort of weird form of symbiosis. But we're happy that Paco Brian is here with us on this very special day.
I'm Paco
Thank
Young.
you.
Yata. Hi,
Okay.
Corey.
Paco, so you consumed Big Balls. You ate them like a gordita crunch, or what? What's the
Yeah,
story
Well,
with that?
you guys are the ones who are like surrounded by the crunch.
So for our audio-only listeners, Corey and I are currently on a space voyage. We're above the Earth right now, floating at about 90,000 feet, and we're being chased by an armada of cheesy gordita crunches. It could be worse, to be honest with you. I'm kind of pumped. Hope they catch up with us, and then we get to have a delicious cheesy gordita crunch dinner.
That's right. It's a spacious gordita. How would you say that?
Mhm.
Like something like that.
I would just call it a delicious space shuttle.
Hey, so before we get to our guest, let's talk about some news. I've got some news today.
What?
lay on. Lay it.
Lay it on us, Sam.
A fucking electric car backed into my STI in the Whole Foods parking lot about an hour and a half ago.
What?
Yeah, backed
Is it
into
t-
me. It was an Uber driver. She dropped off her Uber fare and then proceeded to hit the reverse button, however it works on those cars,
Huh?
and backed into me and destroyed my front bumper. So I'm pretty pumped.
What? Well,
Yeah.
insurance should be able to take care of it, right?
Yeah, I got her insurance, and the best part is like when we were swapping insurance info, she's like, "Yeah, well, hopefully they pay for this. We'll see if it's yours, see if it's ours." I'm like, "You backed into me." And she's like, "Yeah. I mean, whatever happened." Like, oh, bitch. And the best part is, my mom gave me a dash cam for Christmas 2 years ago, and I never put it in my car, so I'm kind of regretting that decision right now. Either way, looks like I'm getting a new front bumper, one way or the other. So that's cool.
Nice.
How are you guys doing today?
Well, I backed in an STI today, driving an electric car.
Yeah.
I wish.
Well,
If I hit you, Sam, you know I'd hit you because I would just keep sending you right into that next pole.
I don't even know how to take that news.
And there's only one way to take it, and that's take it like a champ, Sammy.
The most exciting drift news that I saw today was apparently James Dean will be running an HGK Eurofighter drift car, I imagine in the European series. So that's very cool.
Yeah, well, Kristaps posted a picture on his Instagram, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, of a 2J going into Eurofighter. So had no idea that it was obviously James Dean, but James Dean announced today that 2J's a Eurofighter. I think that's actually the first 2J Eurofighter. So props to Kristaps for going out of his V8 realm and throwing a 2J in, which obviously James Dean probably prefers that, as he's been purely successful in that 2JZ platform.
Yeah, but I wish that Kristaps himself would just compete in FD. I know it's unrelated, but I'm still trying to deal with the thoughts that he won't be in FD this year. But wow.
Sad.
What are we going to do in honor for Kristaps?
I'd say drink a bunch of white wine out of a bag, and or intimidate people, and just bounce off a rev limiter more than is acceptably considered safe.
I agree. We could find that. We can do that in our rental car.
Any other hot juice news in FD as we are approaching
Hot
2
juice.
weeks?
Yeah,
Weeks away. 2 weeks away from FD.
Well, we made a post about this just the other day that Gucci is no longer on Falcon tires, is on Achilles,
What?
which is massive news. And like I said, we'll see more of this as the time gets closer. But Gucci was originally on Nexen, and I know he had a great relationship with Nexen for a couple of years because remember back in 2013, the motorsports manager for Hankook left Hankook, moved over to Nexen, started running Nexen. So that's when like Osbo, Tanner, Gucci, all those Hankook drivers migrated over to Nexen with the team manager. So there was a strong relationship there, but then Gucci had an opportunity to go back to Falcon, which was one of the original tires that Gucci ran on. So it turned into this big cool deal where full circle, Gucci's back with Falcon, and all of a sudden, out of Falcon, right on over to Achilles, which seems like Achilles is getting a pretty good stacked field this year for Formula Drift. So excited to see what they're going to be doing. They're going to be in competition definitely for the championship next to those two other brands. But that's big news to make a big jump like that. A lot of what people don't realize is the amount of energy, effort, and money gets dumped into a driver. And to make that change, it's a pretty big sacrifice from one team to another.
Paco, any hot tips on your side? Any of your cars running these days?
I mean, as far as Formula Drift news, I guess we were on the same page.
What about Paco Drift news?
Oh, nah. I mean, the Corvette build, the 2JC Corvette build is moving on. I got a bunch of new parts that are our friends at Elite Fabrication. They're putting together, and pretty soon I'm going to be able to drop the 2J on it. So I think, yeah.
I like Paco. Can you give us a quick breakdown before we start to show what we're looking at? Looks like we have a bag of Doritos.
Yeah, those are Ruffles.
Yep.
Yeah, what's your setup here? You got some Ruffles?
We got the Ruffles queso, obviously.
Okay, good.
Then
Why couldn't they just call them cheese?
Oh, it says cheese down there. Boom, for you Americans.
So it
Queso
says cheese.
Yeah, cheese.
Cheese.
I have some Angry
Okay.
Orchard.
Andrew
Nice.
Orchard.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then his is the Controlium.
Yep.
Mhm.
Don't mess with that.
Yeah, don't
Don't
touch
touch
it.
that.
I don't
Don't touch
touch
that.
it at all.
No.
Then this is where the magic happens. I just like type.
I
Yeah.
didn't know we were
And then,
doing
and
empty
look,
cribs.
this is Sam. Right
Good.
here.
Look at this.
Hi, Sam. Hi.
And where's the flashlight attachment for your desk? Where do you keep that?
It's right here. I mean, it's a heavy duty bracket.
And that's why Big
It's a
Ball's always so
heavy
quiet.
yeah. It's a heavy duty flashlight.
That's
It's
right.
XL version. Yeah.
All right, and before we get to our guests, we got some other exciting news. Our Formula Drift halftime show is 100% confirmed. We will be in Long Beach, all three of us. We will be doing the halftime show. You will catch us before top 16, after top 32, spouting out mostly freestyle rap. That's one thing that Jim and Ryan said. They're like, hey, we heard you spitting some beats on the show, Sam, and we want you guys to freestyle rap the entire halftime show. So look forward to that. You know, we're going to try to reach a new generation, those that are into freestyle rap from a 32-year-old dude going on 60. So check that out. We also have a mostly confirmed date. I want to say that it is 90% happening this day. We just got to double check schedules, but probably April 1st, Monday, that week of FD, we're going to be doing something very special with new show supporter Grid Life. We're going to be doing the Grid Life Drift Draft. And what that will mean is we're going to be literally approving applications for Grid Life Midwest. And we hope to do this for all 3 rounds now, not just 2. We have a third round of Grid Life coming to Colorado.
Wait, Sam, so are you saying that we have the power?
We have the power. We have some power, which is very dangerous to give us any sort of power at all, I would say.
So we're the
but
ones...
We're going to be talking to and calling all those grassroots drivers, maybe a couple guys you've maybe seen before on the show. Who knows?
So we're the ones going to receive all the hate when somebody doesn't get accepted. I don't know if I want this power, Sam.
Well, the deal is they have, I think, about 80 people that have applied and about 30 slots. And they were like, hey, we don't want this hate on us. Let's hire the Driftcast boys to get hated. So we are looking forward to that hate, I guess. But yeah, check that out. We're going to be updating on Instagram and all the other social media channels when and how that's going down. You'll see Grid Life posting that as well. But lots of big things happening, obviously. This is what we've been waiting for. We survived the off-season. Grid Life's coming back. Formula Drift coming back. It's going to be a good old time. But without further ado, we have one of our most beloved topics on the show, and that is a man who gives kisses to both papas and mamas. Doesn't leave out the mamas. You better believe.
No. That is the truth. We've seen him kiss a lot of mamas in our time.
Yeah,
and we're just so excited.
Once Paco activates the flashlight attachment here, it's what he uses to call the guests. You notice that his hands are moving very fast because he's doing some downstairs work. And there he is.
There he is. The man,
Steph,
the myth,
what's up?
the legend. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Of course. We're so pumped to have you on as one of the, if not the premier drift car engineer builder in the world. And we've talked to you in the past, and we got through a bunch of your history, and we wondered if you were aware of our nickname for you at the time, Papa Mama Kisses. Are you still aware of that nickname that we have for you?
Yeah, but growing up with the name Stephan Papadakis, like
Yeah.
I've had so much worse. It all just.
Well, what are the worst ones?
Oh, geez. Stephanie's just the natural, right? So.
Fair enough.
Who called you Stephanie? Corey will beat them up
Let's
so
go
fast.
fight him right now. I'll go suplex him.
Not to mention Stefan is Sam's girlfriend's name, so
Oh, there's so.
Yeah,
That's
not a
rung a bell,
coincidence.
Sam.
It's not a coincidence.
That's on
I'm
purpose.
already feeling a strange attraction. But she's also shiny bald and a drift car builder, though, so it's weird to think. It's weird to see the comparison. It's very uncanny. But sorry, Corey, go ahead.
I was going to start this off a little bit differently than you, Sam.
Yeah.
All right, you want me to start it off?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I'm gonna start off Steph in a scenario.
Mm-hmm.
This is my scenario. All right, Steph, let's do throwback. This is 2001. We're going back to 2001. You have a very young, hungry race car driver, drag racer, and he's like, "Man, I really want to get into drag racing." His name's Sam Balvin, and he goes, "I need a Honda Civic, and I need to go fast. And I never drag race, but I need to go fast. What could you build me? If we throw back to 2001, what type of drag car are you going to build Sam Balvin?"
Are we talking front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive?
Do you know what? Sam has tons of experience in the Ford Probes. He's comfortable with front-wheel drive.
Yeah.
So let's go front-wheel drive.
If it's 2001, it's going to be front-wheel drive.
Okay.
And it'll be, like an EG Civic, which is
Okay.
for those 92 to 95, I believe.
Hot hatch.
Okay, Sam, are you into it so far? Sam, are you happy?
I'm very into it. Is it going to have VTEC, or do you disable that at this point?
No, you're gonna have VTEC, and you'll
Okay.
try to do like a cost-effective build. So we'll do like a B16A.
Oh,
VTEC
Sam.
engine, and then turbocharge it.
Okay.
Oh. Sam, what do you think about the B16, Sam? Tell me about it.
I prefer a B18, but I'll take a 16 if Steph recommends it.
what about the B52s?
I mean, if you got B18 money, we can do it. But
Yeah.
Ooh.
Unlimited money, because I guess this is a better intro than any. If you heard Steph's last show, probably about 100 episodes ago, we talked a lot about his history, and he is one of the premier drift car builders today. But in the past, he cut his teeth doing import drag racing and made some of the fastest front-wheel drive cars ever made, some of them Civics. One of which I remember recently seeing in the basement of the Peterson Museum. I think there's an AEM drag Civic down there still, maybe.
it's back at our shop, actually.
Oh, you got it back. Yeah, that's the one. So that's the same car that we've been seeing in your awesome, maybe not featured in the videos, but on your Instagram. You've been doing a lot of really cool video work. And I think I saw that Civic spied in that shop there.
Totally. Yeah.
Sam, I need to finish this build. So we got an EG Civic, B16 turbo.
What turb ski are we putting on it? 2001.
Oh, geez. Like a fast track turbo.
Okay. 40 pounds of boost?
Oh, back then? Nah, it's going to be somewhere in the probably high 20s or low 30s.
Ooh, I don't know if Sam's ready for that power, but I say let's turn it up.
That's all good. I was spooling at 14 pounds and that lady hit me in the parking lot today.
So we're looking at a B16 turbo setup. What else would we put on? A cage? Is it caged or no? Is this a street car?
You got to have a
Cage.
cage because Sam's going nines. So,
Oh, we're
so-
going to
Obviously.
send Sam down the drag strip in 9. So with that setup, you're telling me we can do a 9-second quarter mile with the B16 proper turbo setup.
30 pounds.
Close, 30 pounds.
Yep. And back then you probably run like a wheelie bar or something. And
Yeah. Wait, you don't do those anymore?
I think that like the class nowadays with the front wheel drive that's popular, it's like a street class and they don't run the wheelie bars.
I don't understand how wheelies work when a front-wheel drive
I
car.
was just going to ask the same thing.
We can go through the whole concept there, but it is counterintuitive.
No, let's
But
spend the next 2 hours. Screw drifting. Let's talk about
wheelie bars.
Let's talk about wheelie bars and front-wheel drive cars. All right.
Yeah.
Are we done with that concept, Corey?
I think I took notes on exactly what I'm going to build next, so
All
we're
right,
good.
cool. That's your
Yeah.
next world. So Steph is one of the primary faces behind our good friend American driver, Fred Osbo, and he has built championship-winning drift cars and is always on the cutting edge of drift car technology. So, what are your secrets this year? What is the thing that everyone wants to? Let's get out of the way. People are only listening to this very show to hear your drift car building tips. For all the pro-am drivers, for all the grassroots guys, and even all the pro drivers teams that are listening right now, what can they steal from you? Let's just get it out of the way.
Yeah, so let's just start with, I guess, the bit of the elephant in the room, and then we'll move on to that. So we're not running a Supra this year. We're going to run. Yeah, and we're going to run the Corolla hatchback again.
Mm-hmm.
And
same one as last year, or a new one?
Same one. Yep. It's going to very much look like a continuation of last year, and that's what we found to be one of the secrets of success is we'll try to start the season continuing where we left off last year, the year before. Mm-hmm. And then we kind of have a wish list of what we want to do for this year, but we reserve that a little bit until we get a good baseline of hopefully results for this year.
Are there any big changes from last year's Corolla chassis?
No. I mean, what we're talking about doing now this year is maybe some progressive nitrous instead of just a one-shot thing. Mm-hmm. And then what was the other one? Some different sway bar setup. Nothing crazy. It's going to look very similar. And then Motegi's making us some new trick custom wheels, so it'll look a little bit different there.
Nice.
I mean, if you guys came narrowly down the stream, is that what the song goes? You guys narrowly were edged out by James Dean last year. Almost took out the one who's been dominating FD for 2 years, only to be knocked aside by Vaughn, a dude who didn't show up for a couple rounds, more or less, and then showed up at the very end in Irwindale and knocked out Freddie. But I feel like there's not a lot of changes that should be made unless James is going to be stepping it up. I mean, that's kind of been the competition for the past year or two, is just how do we beat James Dean? And every driver's been looking at that. But I feel like you guys probably haven't done like a James killer package. It's just you're already there. There's something needs to be tweaked a little bit, maybe, whether it's Freddie's driving or whether it's something on the car. But how do you go?
Like driving wise, and you try to have the car not have any failures, and then that's you're already going to be like 80% there with those two things,
right?
Because like a lot of the rounds get lost because the driver's made a fatal error with his driving, or the car breaks down in some way. So reliability and consistency, I think, is for sure the low-hanging fruit in almost any of the teams.
Which it seems like we used to be able to make the joke on the show that you guys would go through a motor around, but those days seem to be done. Like you guys have kind of dialed in that motor to live and last longer, and you're not replacing them after qualifying and after top 16.
Anymore. We swapped motors twice last year, so it's not prone. I mean, the last two events, no problems. But early in the years we had some issues. It's always leads back to head gasket issues, and without getting, unless you guys want to get into the technical stuff, we're literally reaching. Okay, we're reaching the limit of what the aluminum castings can handle. So imagine you've got all this fuel and all this air and everything getting shoved into the combustion chamber, right? With the turbo and the nitrous and everything. And when the spark plug ignites that mixture, it pushes down on the piston really hard, and that's how you get your torque and the horsepower and everything. Well, at the same time, when it's pushing down the piston, that equal and opposite reaction is trying to push up on the combustion chamber in the head and trying to basically lift the head with the same amount of force that is pushing down the piston. The combustion pressure and all of that is trying to escape from the chamber. So if you bolt the head down really hard and don't allow those head studs to stretch up, what we're finding is the head casting, the aluminum is actually flexing up and deflecting and and allowing the combustion chamber to like flex up and push out the head gasket and have a failure that way. So we've continued to work on that. One thing we run pins down through the top of the cylinder head, down through the water port, down into that head gasket mating surface, and that's helped some of that. But basically, that's the situation is once you get to some sort of pressure, then things just start moving dynamically and well beyond what those engines were designed for.
And I'm glad you led into that. These are kind of unconventional blocks as far as power makers in drifting and other motorsports. You're not running like a 2J. You're not running LS, obviously. What's the block you're running?
We run the Toyota 2AR FE. So if you have a 4-cylinder, it's all aluminum, it's lightweight, it makes great power, But if you have like a 2015 Toyota Camry, or like the 2014 or 2015 Scion TC or a RAV4, they all came with this 2AR engine that we run.
Yeah. And why not, other than the probably obvious fact of the fact you don't want
We built the original Scion TC first generation for Tanner Faust to drive. We ran that NASCAR engine.
Right.
It was a V8, relatively heavy because all the NASCARs use an iron block. Is actually part of their rules that they have to run an iron block.
Yeah.
And that thing was like 400 and something pounds and made about 600 horsepower to the ground. It was okay. But when we built the TC2 for Frederick, the second generation, the Scion really wanted us to have more like authenticity in the car, and like as authentic as a rear-wheel drive converted Scion TC could be. So they wanted us to use the 4-cylinder engine, and so there was some push from them to use that engine. And then in addition to that, on the Scions, all these front-wheel drive cars, they're called what they called a cab forward design. So the driver and the firewall is all very far forward to make more room inside the cockpit. And front-wheel drive engines, because they're transverse mounted, like they're like left to right basically, they don't need a bunch of room on the firewall. So, and there's a Formula Drift rule that says you can't move the engine farther back than the stock firewall location. So if we put a big heavy V8 or a 2JZ or something like that, you end up with a car where the engine is really far forward, and you end up with a lot of what they call front end bias or front end weight, and it makes the car not handle that well. So using the little 4-cylinder aluminum engine that we do, our whole engine package is much lighter, and we can make the car handle better because of that.
Corey Paco, do you mind if I take a quick detour right now from here? Because I know we want to talk. There's so many questions.
Yeah. No,
The
go
entire
for it.
day
Yeah,
with you,
because
but-
I'm just on the Papadakis train right now. So
I
go
know
for it.
Corey's writing notes, and he's as any drift car builder, anyone.
Well, all I got so far is throw away
show.
2JZ and get a 4-cylinder Toyota.
Right.
So that's all I got so far.
Yeah,
What?
but this is what happens when you start
Yeah.
having.
Don't even. I'm going. I'm going.
Corey's almost there. I'm full
Yeah, I'm
gray,
almost
man.
there.
Paco's in the struggle as well. We get it. So what would be the Formula Drift rule you would change right now if it's just like a single rule to have maximum gain as far as driving is concerned? What would the change have to be to enable you to make that much of a better car?
Man, I think if they allowed us to do our own like cross members and subframes.
That's what I keep on hearing is the rear subframe, because we built at RS we built this Kia, which I think we talked to you about at some point down the road, or back on the road I should say, with a full custom rear because it wasn't made for FD standards or anything. But then like when someone like Turk or someone else drove it, they're like, holy shit, like this is incredible, the fact that you just change the rear end and you don't have to worry about mounting points and you can just do your own custom subframe. I understand that FD made the rule originally to keep competitiveness, but I wonder if at this point now it's kind of stifling competitiveness because you're kind of stuck with a certain car's rear subframe.
I think the argument would be that you're stifling possibly new cars from coming into the class because people don't want to develop it or potentially have a reduction in performance because of how the factory car was designed. I mean, the fact of the matter is, we're just. It's hard to beat a Corvette chassis.
Right, and that's
Anything.
what
I
makes
mean,
me
that's
think
just-
about it. Those
yeah.
cars are so well equipped from the factory, and we see Joao. Thank you, Joao. We talked to him last week. We have Matt Field, and there's no doubt going to be many more. Yeah, Dirk is coming. Dirk's been here, but we're going to see more coming in with this Corvette chassis that is already so well equipped.
I mean,
from the factory
Joao is
with-
pretty much driving it relatively stock, from what he
Yeah.
said. You know.
But I mean, we might see a thing where it's just like everyone's just going to choose if there's sponsors and everyone willing to run the same chassis because it's just going to have such an advantage as far as build quality or build, I don't know, build advantages.
This is my theory with the Corvette. It's already a drift car off the lot. It already comes with the engine that people want them to put in their cars, the LS motor.
Yep.
Just add some steering angle and you've
It's
already-
really, yeah,
Yeah.
you're there. You got it. You add some angle and you're there. What is the new? So we had the angle kit that came out, and that changed the drift world. We had Daigo show up with 1,200 horsepower. That changed the drift world. What is the next big thing that is going to change the drift world, in your opinion?
It's a good question. Man, I don't know. Like as far as performance on track.
Yeah, something that's going to rock the world in the way that these things kind of rocked the world in the drift community. What's the next big? And I know it's a tough question.
Well,
to
I want to
ask.
kind of lead into that. I don't want to sway them on a thought,
Yeah.
but maybe this could play into, obviously we're being impacted by an electric vehicle this year. Do you feel that's going to be a play advantage for the future of drifting? And do
Yeah.
you see that as an advantage in the future, or is that something you're not even really concerned about?
It's something we've definitely talked about, and it's something I definitely thought about. I don't think in the near future, with the teams that are, I'm not very optimistic about I don't know the team doing it, but I do know that it's really hard to reprogram and potentially have. It's a big question. So
Right.
I think there's a couple things that have to happen. You have to have a driver that understands what he wants out of the engine or the motor, electric motor setup. And then you have to have a team that can then translate that into how to change like some of the drivetrain or the tuning. And then you have to have the team or the engineer that's able to physically like make those changes in the car. And that's just a lot to ask for within the drifting scope.
It's an entirely new frontier, and yeah, it would take many years. I don't, like you said, I don't think that this year will have as big of a shaking impact, but this is the seed that will grow in the future, unless rules forbid it quickly here, which I don't think we're going to see very quickly because I doubt there's going to be a hard advantage. But I feel like someone like you or someone in a similar engineering world will come up with a way to make an unfair, quote unquote, advantage with an electric assisted or an electric primary powertrain.
Yeah, I think that there's potential for that to be for sure competitive. I just like the engine sounds, and if you don't have the engine sound, you're left with like just the terrible tire screeching only. And I don't know if that'll be a very good show.
Yeah, I'm really excited actually to hear what it'll sound like. Just off throttle, hearing no tire or no sound whatsoever. As I'm so used to just loud drift cars and backfire.
Quietest qualifying lap in history.
Well,
Just
I mean,
imagine that one car just flying
if
around
you-
by itself.
if you see, for example, like what they did with in some cars, I think even the Ford Mustang had that system where you would play engine noises through the speakers. So if you
Oh, yeah,
get
BMW does that.
think-
Mercedes may
So,
do that. Like,
imagine if what they do is that they get the audio modulator to, depending on the motor, the electric motor's RPMs, it generates a like some kind of noise.
I mean, I'm down for that if
Yeah,
everyone has that.
but wait,
maybe.
But they broadcast it through the stadium's speakers instead of through the car.
I mean,
That
people
sounds
definitely
like
hate it.
That sounds like it's right there with let's just put smoke machines on the back of the cars.
Yeah.
and smoke.
I know, right?
But you don't see like any type of advantages going that route at all, or it's not even a concern to you? Because we've been messaged quite a bit by a few people as far as they were cracking down on everybody for a while there as far as having everything drive-by-wire or everything cable-driven and not drive-by-wire for traction control and things like that. And it's like Sam brought up a point not too long ago. It's like, look what these people can do with those little flying drones.
Well,
You
yeah,
can change throttle position remotely, or you can adjust everything from being a mile away right to your controller, right to the device itself.
well,
and
the
if you
source
can
of
do
that
that-
conversation was Kevin Wells. Your conversation with him, and you were
Right.
asking him if he was concerned about the tinkering with the power delivery, essentially, of the electric car and doing a form of traction control. And he said, like, no, I'm not really concerned. And unfortunately, I wasn't there for that episode. But then I brought up in the later episode, like, yeah, I've been messing with FPV drones and just those electric motors lately. And even just freeware, the software that comes with it, I can mess with power delivery and I can tell it to step up power or pull back power depending on throttle input. And it feels like, that is in some form a form of what could be considered traction control on a car by telling it. And granted, I know you're doing this in tuning to some degree anyways with the fuel motor, and you're telling it in tuning when you want the power to come on, but not to this degree of precision and then you can say, I literally want 87% throttle for the first duration of wide open throttle, and then I want after 0.5 seconds of wide open throttle, I want to give it 93% throttle and so on, just to do power delivery. I mean, that's a real concern if that's something we're not trying to allow in FD, that electric motors can provide, because we have no cable and we have no way to modulate that power.
A good driver is still going to probably beat that person.
Right. that's the
I mean,
other thing, too.
it's, but if you have a good driver and some sort of unfair advantage, then, but I mean, look, I think that they should allow this stuff and whatever these things are and worry about it on the back end, because you don't want to stifle the innovation. And having all this stuff, like whether it's electric or electric motors or whatever, like that's interesting. Like I want to come back and watch the new event because there's this new car there.
Yeah. It was exciting to see Daigo for one round stomping everyone with just the 1,200 horsepower when everyone had 600. And granted, that's not like some crazy innovation, except for it was. It kind of rocked the sport. But I look forward to maybe a round where someone like you or another tuner or builder figures out the thing and stomps the shit out of everyone for one round, and they say, "Oh God, we've got to make this illegal." Like,
yeah. So we obviously paid really good attention to Daigo's, championship year.
Yeah.
And there was a couple things that happened. He had a reliable car. And he just straight up didn't make any mistakes. And he had
the judging was in such a way that rewarded pulling away from people at the time.
Well, so there's three things, right? So number one, the car was reliable. Number two, he didn't make mistakes. And number three, Achilles brought out literally the best tire that year. Like it was on a whole nother level what he had. And that's just a winning combination. If you've got the best tire and you're not making mistakes, you're probably going to win the round.
Yeah. But didn't judging play in that too, though? Because now they kind of have rules set up that if you just pull away from the rear, the chase car, that is not as rewarded. And Daigo wasn't shallow angle by any means, but there definitely was, like we saw Kristaps, I think, in St. Louis get kind of punished for that. Like he was fast as fuck compared to like some car he was driving against. And he wasn't shallow angle as far as the history of shallow angle is concerned, but he was just intentionally smoking someone on this fast course already. Like it's not as rewarded.
He was also following extremely close and closer than other people were. And he was able to just get his car in there and kind of hit the brakes and just surge and just stay closer than anybody else is doing because of the power a bit. And then definitely because of the tire and his skill. Like it was just a combination of things that we hadn't seen. And it was my analogy was, it was like baseball when the first person threw a curveball, the first pitcher threw a curveball. That's what he did that year. Was he threw a curveball and everybody's like, you can do that? And then we all changed what we did the next year.
Right. Is there any changes happening behind the scenes that we don't know about this year? Is anyone making any big changes, or is it kind of just let's be reliable and figure out a way to beat James in 2019?
That's our strategy. I haven't seen.
Same with everyone else that we've talked to so far. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's we're not going to come out with something technical that's going to trade off with Frederick just getting out there and I think beating him on track, driver to driver.
Yeah.
And do you think a lot of the innovation right now is kind of peaking in drifting? Like, do you feel that we're getting to a point where it's like, if we go any more, maybe too much on all the supporting components and it's going to be too much maintenance? Or do you feel like there's still another large piece of development that we really haven't tapped into yet in the motorsports of drifting?
I think that we're already sort of on the far end of it. Like I think the cars are a little bit more expensive than they should be to build, and they take a little bit longer than they should be able to build, and they're a little bit less reliable than ideal, because all of that stuff can sort of hurt the show. And at the end of the day, if we don't have a good show, then we're going to be hanging out in the parking lot together doing, donkey shows or whatever they call it.
Which is still cool. Donkey shows are cool, man.
Yeah, we'll head down to Tijuana for a couple.
Yeah,
what's the donkey show? What's the one are they doing, like NorCal, where they like go in the parking lot and they're all doing
You mean the
show?
The street takeover?
Donkey show is, I haven't seen either, so
little edgy.
Paco knows all about him.
Yeah.
Paco, going back to Guadalajara days,
I'm a bit offended, Steph.
Was that a joke on you? I didn't.
No, Paco is a big connoisseur of donkey shows. He's down.
Paco was a
okay.
performer for 6 years before his injury.
I'm
so.
also
Were you
known.
trying to put together the drifting and the donkey show and was wondering how that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Like that.
I'm also known as El Burro. So it's
That's
that's
the
me pretty
donkey.
much. Yep.
Donkey.
So, Steph, before we continue down the same stream of thought, we have YouTube open. It is a live show, and YouTube, we have the option for Super Chat, where fans can ask questions of you. And one is from our good friend, Logan Cole, and he says, why didn't Castro buy/drive the hatch that sold on auction to drive with Osbo? Which I'm not sure what exactly he means by that, but why?
Dude,
Why did
okay.
Castro buy that car? But we also want to talk about that car because it sold for way too cheap, in all of our opinions.
Oh, how did you get in? My kid just came in.
Oh, hello.
Just like, hey,
up,
what's
man?
up, Dad?
What's up, buddy?
What's up, buddy?
All right, you got to go out, bud. Go.
This is not a show for kids.
not a kid-friendly
unfortunately.
show.
Yeah. As we learned when we had our fan appreciation episode a few weeks ago, and we had a underage caller call in, and we're like, "Oh no, have you been listening this whole time?"
Whoops.
Corey,
So,
Corey's not
so
allowed.
he's an 86 guy. Castro's an 86
Yeah.
guy, and the IM, and he also works with Toyota. The thing
Yeah.
with the IM is an old model. So we brought that car out the last year that it was being sold, and then that's it. So it doesn't have relevancy within the Toyota world at the moment.
Right,
Oh,
it can't satisfy a Toyota sponsorship, but for someone that's like a pro-am driver and doesn't have a factory sponsorship, they can drift the shit out of that thing, and it is probably the cheapest selling, most well-equipped drift car of all time, I would say, based off
Yeah,
of.
but you know what it is it's only as valuable as what somebody will pay for it, right? So when you're talking about an engine that's a bit obscure, and you're talking about a chassis that's a bit obscure, and you're kind of marrying us in a way if you buy that car, because we're the ones that know how to rebuild everything. So you can see why there might not be a lot of buyers for it.
Yeah, but I think the gentleman that got a hold of that car will be very pleased with it as long as he understands and can harness the
And
Papa
real quick,
Dockis
Steph,
power.
could you give us a breakdown on that car real quick? Like what you didn't like a lot of people who sell like previously used race cars, they'll put a different motor in it and they'll put a different package in it so they're not getting the package. Did you change anything prior to selling, or is that's the car that Osbo drove in that year?
It wasn't. It's not exactly.
Okay, so there was
it-
some changes slightly.
But it's not because we're hiding anything or
Oh, for sure.
keeping anything in reserve. That car was run all year. We had like a different intake manifold, and we went through we always go through some revisions. It ended the year, making 1,000 horsepower, really similar engine to what we used in 2018. It ended in 2017 with very similar to what we were running in 2018. But then we brought that car back out in 2018 and did like a demo with it.
Mhm.
So it had like a wet sump oil system, and we reduced the power a little bit on it. It didn't have nitrous on it. A bunch of stuff that just made it kind of a better turnkey car. And we decided to just sell it like that instead of upgrading to. I mean, and the guy that bought it and his kids who might drive it, it ends up being a way better mess around car than this, crazy tuned competition thing that it was run at. But it's all upgradable. Like it's bolt-on other stuff if they ever want to run pro with it.
But it had a Winners and it had a G-force. And what power was it making at the point of the cell? Was 500-600 horsepower?
It depends on what the number you put into the laptop. Like it can make
Right.
600 or it can make 850 if you turn the boost up, and then you could turn the nitrous on and it makes 1,000. Like it's just it's literally the number you put into the laptop nowadays and how much boost it makes.
Did this come with a Steph crash course and like product support, or what was it like?
Yeah. We got car married. That's what I called it.
Okay. And we have one more super chat question from Joshua Osborne. He says, "Ever thought about using a billet 2J block?" And I guess as another bigger picture, like why not a 2J in the first place?
Yeah, so the 2J is long and it's heavy, and so it because of the firewall is really far forward, it'd be a really heavy front biased car.
Oh yeah,
The-
that'd be
the
crazy
Corolla?
when you think of the. Whenever I see in that engine bay, I'm always astounded by how short it is from windshield to front bumper. I can't imagine a inline six in that thing.
Yeah, so it wouldn't handle as well, and then arguably people give us crap for some engine problems that we've had, rightfully so. But geez, I don't see any of these 2J guys not having issues,
I
including
know.
James Dean blew a motor and lost a round in St. Louis or something. So,
Yeah.
we get shit because we're pretty high. When we have problems, we kind of share it. Like, hey, check us
Yeah.
out. We changed an engine, or people are looking at us because we're the Toyota team, or we might be pretty competitive, and I call drifting a bit of an underdog sport, and people root for the underdog, and when the underdog kind of starts winning, then they're get hated on a little bit, and they root for the next underdog,
Yeah.
and
we've
there's
seen
just
it
a
with-
bit of a cycle there, and that's kind of the human nature American way anyway. So whatever, I'd love for everything to be perfect. And but back to the original question about why not using a aluminum 2J. We were trying to use a modern Toyota engine. I think Toyota likes that, and we've gone so far down the development of this engine that I think going to a 2J wouldn't necessarily net us any better results, and we would have to go back towards developing. And I have yet to see a billet 2JZ. Everybody talks about this billet 2JZ thing. I've never seen a car reliable out there drifting or doing anything with 2JZ. It's all hype in my world, from what I've seen.
And there's
everybody's
that.
gonna say, well, this guy, whatever, at this one drag event made this horsepower and ran this time, and okay.
Drag racing is calm compared to drifting. It's on for 7 to 12 seconds and then off.
Yeah.
Versus
It's fun to have that story. Like,
Yeah.
check out our build. And we did the billet 2. Even Daigo had like a billet 2J build at some point. I never saw it run. I don't even think he uses it. There must be something in there.
We saw Forsberg's success, or lack thereof, with these drag VQ motors that were claimed all day. These things will run single-digit numbers in the drag strip, but then of course he puts it onto a drift scenario, and that, and among other reasons, it didn't run as anticipated. So drag racing does not necessarily translate to our sport.
Well, I think that's a great question to ask, Steph. Is there similarities as far as drifting and drag racing, as far as the stresses you're putting on the engines, or is it two different worlds?
I think it's a similar. Hard to say. It's not hard to say. I think there's a lot of stress in short periods of time, and it's definitely less power than drag. But you're dealing way more with temperature and drift. And
The heat cycling so much worse, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's one of the issues that we've had with our engines is we've had a lot of the cylinders. We've sleeved engines that would work really well in drag racing, but with all the heat cycles that we do, we found that we've had a lot of the blocks, the sleeves drop, and we've gone away from that now. And we use like this cylinder support system setup where we actually use a stock block and machine the top of it and put like this block guard looking thing to turn it into a solid deck. So that's something that we've been doing now that's really helped from head gaskets blowing, that you wouldn't really see necessarily in the drag race world. Or you might be able to get 4 runs or 6 runs or a weekend's worth of drag racing runs, and the engine lasts through the event and you're happy. But on the drifting, that's Thursday practice, and you've got to make it through the whole weekend. And hopefully for several, we try to get 4 events out of an engine, and then we'll pull it out and rebuild it. But and then that's considered an endurance engine. So we're kind of building these drag racing engines for endurance purpose.
If let's say like Osbo runs wall and wins the event, and he does his X amount of practice rounds and his qualifying rounds and goes through, how many battles is it to the victory? If there's no one more times, is that 5, 6 battles? I forget off the top of my head. But he goes through all that. The engine still feels strong at the end. Do you still pull it apart? What sort of maintenance do you do after the round?
We will not pull it apart. We will check the oil filter and see if there's any metal there. We do a lot of data logging, so we know what the oil pressure is throughout the weekend. And if when rod bearings or main bearings are starting to go out, your oil pressure is going to drop. So if at this temperature, we usually have this oil pressure at this RPM, and it's consistent, then you probably don't really have engine bearing issues. The pistons and rings are reliable. We don't have any issues there. And if the head gasket's not leaking or blown, then we just keep running it. So short answer is we just keep running it until we get to 4 events or it breaks.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, so let's say you take the Corolla to the drag strip, what would that thing run in the quarter?
We've been talking about it. So we want to do that. We probably want to do it in the next month. The Probably somewhere in the 10s with the drift tire that we run. I'd love to try to run a 9 in it, but I think we have to go to a different tire to do that.
Maybe put some Hoosier slicks on her.
Yeah, I'm thinking like a Goodyear, like the full-on drag wrinkle side things. But
Yeah,
they're,
yeah.
like, below the
Eight-
fucking axles.
8
and rear
PSI.
end of it.
I noticed. I was gonna bring this up in the pre-show before we had you on, but I didn't want to spend too much time without you. So I was gonna bring up to Corey and Paco as well because you were there. I went to my first NASCAR event in the infield this weekend, and you were also there at Fontana. And it blew my mind. One, the level of engineering is a lot crazier than most would think when they think about, oh, NASCAR, just a bunch of old tube frames turning left. But like, the engineering is insane, and the small things that people do to gain advantages are insane. But what's your take on modern day NASCAR and maybe comparison to our sport and how we can take from it and how they can maybe take from us?
Well, I don't know if there's a lot of comparisons. They run so much of a spec car. All the cars are so similar. But I mean, their level of prep and their level of tuning, I mean, you have specialists, right? You've got someone that specialists in the engine, you got someone that specialists in the driving, and someone that specializes in the suspension, and together you have a strong team. And I think that works in motorsports just generally. But I was there on Friday because I was filming another YouTube piece that I'm putting together on technology you didn't know about NASCAR. And I've got access to some of the guys at TRD at Toyota. Some of the team crew guys like recognize me, and they answer some of the questions I had about the cars. And I'm kind of sneaking around, looking under the hoods and looking under the.
How much did they freak
wheels.
the fuck out?
Dude,
Did they know you were doing that?
One of the crew guys, I was with my camera a little bit too long, and he literally thought I was a spy for another team.
Oh yeah, it's a big deal. We weren't, so we were just there shooting for Mechanics Gloves, and I've filmed at Penske before, so I know that they're super secretive. But like, we even got close to a wheel well, and one of the dudes is like, "Guys, back up, turn your cameras around, turn it off." Like, it was insane. I'm like, no, we're shooting your gloves, man. Don't worry.
This is my issue with all that is. I don't care about the drivers. Yeah. I don't care about who won whatever race. But I do care if they show some cool technology. And I don't need to know what spring rate they're using or whatever freaking something competitive edge that they have that they don't want the other teams to know about. But dude, guys, like at least show us some of the cool stuff that everybody in the paddock already knows you guys are doing. So at least people that are into mechanical stuff would enjoy checking out, your cars or care about the teams a little bit. But when they don't show that stuff, all I've got is the TV broadcast and some driver. I don't care about what Joey Logano placed at Daytona. Like it doesn't have any interest to me. But it'd be kind of cool to see the engine on a dyno, and they talk about what kind of power it makes and how they make the power a little bit.
Right.
And then I'd be a little bit more interested in NASCAR.
Well, something that I try to say on this show and elsewhere, just in conversations, is I was always from a young fan of drifting, like the openness of the sport was intriguing to me, and just the open pits and the open knowledge. And I never cared about NASCAR. And then when I finally was kind of forced into the NASCAR world through working in the film world, it's like, oh, NASCAR is actually pretty cool. It's just we don't see that side of it because it's so restricted and it's so heavily, forced us to just see who got pole position and who did that big overtake. But it's like there's a lot of weird, cool technology. The pit stops are so cool. Like there's so much cool to it that we don't really see.
But could you imagine that if they also made that a part of the story of the actual team, announcing that this team is testing this new suspension component? It's only one of the first teams testing this component. Let's see how well they do this week.
But
and
they don't want to share it. I get it.
But you know what?
There's
It's like that could also, I think a lot of the stuff, and I think the cool thing about drifting is there's so many stories that are told from each round or leading up to a new round with new cars, new products, new technology that makes people excited about it. And obviously, like Steph was saying, is that's what a lot of the technology is hiding from NASCAR. And the other thing cool that's about the whole drifting thing is a lot of stuff that we're doing in Formula Drift is obtainable to the most common drifter and grassroots. It's like they can do a lot of this stuff. And part of me is saying like, well, why hide it if this is going to be the next generation? But it's like they have access or inspirations to get that. And I think that's what NASCAR's cutting out by not doing any of that. The story, that alone.
With that philosophy, we've decided as a team that we would share as much of what we were doing as possible. So, whether it's something inside the engine. So I've got YouTube videos showing the total disassembly of our engine. And it gets to the point to where it doesn't really matter what our bearing clearance is. Like, that's not necessarily that interesting, but just being able to see inside there, or showing the suspension, or showing the brakes, or just sharing with people the car, because maybe you don't care about Frederick Osbo. Maybe you don't care about who won at freaking Long Beach, but maybe
Who
you
doesn't
just
care?
well,
You tell me their names.
some people
I-
might just
everyone
want to
should
see
care
cool
about
technical stuff. Maybe I'm into four-wheel drives and I just want to see interesting fabrication and get inspired to build my, Jeep Cherokee rock crawler thing with that.
Well, that's a very great analogy too, because what you're doing is you're broadening the audience that is engaging with what you're actually doing. And I think that was been a problem with a lot of the drivers or a lot of teams leading up to this, is a lot of people was always focusing towards the drift fan. Even with sponsors, they're talking, hey, we got so many drift fans, so many drift fans. But for example, if I'm, selling stuff, it's like, hey, do you know what? We're targeting people who love engineering, who love the mechanics. It's like they may not even know about drifting, but now they know how a 2AR works or how to build an engine. We saw that when you just built the 2J from top to bottom, and it was like most people who may not be in the drifting, that may be in the drag and have stumbled across that. Now, Stephan Papadakis just got another 300,000 views off of video that wasn't even really related towards drifting, but just purely towards mechanics. And I think you're hitting a much broader audience than just the drift person. I think that's what a lot of people need to start looking at, is what are they doing to broaden their audience? And that's what we've been kind of seeing with what you've been doing with your channel and things like that.
Which is really cool to see too.
And it's fun too. Like, what are we gonna do, all this cool stuff and just hide it from everybody, and like the four dudes at the shop know about it? Like, I feel like there's a fun story there. So let's share it and have some fun. That's why I I don't do these shows that often, but any questions you guys have or anybody has, then I'll answer it.
Yeah, which we really appreciate. And let's talk about that YouTube, or not just YouTube, let's just call it a social media series. Like, you started showing up doing these kind of weird, eclectic, fun looking car videos however many months ago, and it definitely caught my eye from my perspective of someone that's in the drifting and automotive film community. It's like, oh, like one of the most acclaimed and well respected car builders is suddenly showing us all this weird step-by-step, not even like a how-to video, but just disassembly and reassembly of stuff that most people aren't doing, or at least aren't showing. How did that get inspired, and who's filming it? Who's editing it? I'm curious.
Yeah, so the impetus for that, or the reason why we did that, is there was a conversation that we had internally at the team, that so much of these teams is based on your social media exposure, right? And Frederick, Osbo has, big Facebook following and Instagram following, and sponsors like that stuff, right? But kind of looked at the team, our team, just the Papadakis Racing brand, and we weren't that strong. And the idea was that if Frederick left the team because he didn't want to drift anymore, or he had injured, or he hated me and wanted to go, compete with, I don't know, do something else, which is none of that is the case. But it's like, where would that leave us, right? So the thought was, well, I guess we do this cool stuff. Let's just make a whole story about all the cool stuff that we do, and maybe other people will find that it's cool. So the idea was to just get a camera, start filming stuff, throw it up on Instagram, because it's relatively straightforward to film and edit, 1 minute videos, or less than 1 minute videos, and then see what kind of reactions. So for about a year, I just practiced using. So I film and edit and do all the stuff myself.
So you are doing it. That's what I was getting at. Man, dude, it looks really good.
Not to mention, I mean, like, for example, this video where we're playing in the background, 63,000 views, 64,000 views. And
here's another fun fact.
You just posted a couple
total
days.
channel has 6.1 million total views, and in your 2JZ detailed breakdown, this is over 1.1 million views.
It just shows that how people were hungry for these videos, and this is not definitely the first 2JZ build breakdown we've seen, but it's done very clearly and with as much authority as you can build, being like a master Toyota and an import technician. So it's really awesome to see, and the success you've had for it is very well deserved. It just goes to show that there was a desire for this thing, and you're supplying that in a manner that
Yeah, I had no idea. Like, I'm literally making videos of that I would want to watch.
Yeah.
right? So if someone had a page like this on jet engines for different jet fighters, like we're
Yeah.
going to take apart of F-14 Tomcat engine, you know,
Yeah.
it's the same as Top Gun. I'd watch that in a heartbeat. I'd be
Hell
like,
yeah.
show me the inside of this thing. So that's I mean, it's a simple concept, but it just takes
Wow.
some time to learn how to use the camera. I've got, you know, it just takes some time to figure out how to do it. But there's no money. There's very little money. Like, you know, maybe I make $1,000 a month on YouTube or something like that. There's
Which is
zero
still
money on
huge.
Instagram.
That's a lot of views to get that too. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
we've all done various
But I can't
degrees
pay
of
somebody to do it. Like there's
No,
no,
of course.
like,
Yeah, there's
and
no
if I
salary
was,
in it.
and I've had some friends film with me, and it's weird because I don't really get my vision
Mhm.
of how I think, because directors know how to make stuff pretty, but
Mhm.
they might not understand what someone that has a technical eye wants to see and how they want to see it.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're, you know, the artsy guys doing like this shallow depth of field, so the turbocharger and the blades in focus, but the rest of the engine's all blurry because
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, cinematography, it's really nice and it's like dark in the back and it's bright. I don't know. It just, I want to see everything, man. Show me. And some of the shots, like, it's not even really about wrenching on the turbocharger. It's what's in the background of the shop. What does this guy
Mhm.
have in the toolbox? Like, just a bunch of, like, how do you lay out the towels on the table?
Perfect
Like,
timing.
You know, I just feel like there's a bunch of cool story there.
Yeah,
What-
or
what's
even
your-
something as simple as just how to lay out the parts so you don't forget where everything goes.
Yeah,
Like-
and I'm always struggling with that in my world as a director of such build video content, and it's like, yeah, we do have a 3-man team to film, you know, this engine being taken apart, and we have 3 red cams, and we have $10,000 in lighting, or do we put a chesty GoPro on them and let it run for half an hour? Like, which is going to be more successful in the eyes of viewers? Like, what do people want to see more? And it's always a gamble, and it's always like a thought that is always in the back of our head. It's like, why do we spend the money on high production things when many of the times a GoPro on a chesty is as cool, if not cooler, because it's raw and it is real? And I don't know, it's something that's a big debate constantly in our world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm using $1,000 Sony A6500 camera. I think
That's
I've
it.
got
That's my
a-
next question. Yeah,
Yeah,
what do
so
you
I got an A6500, so I shoot all this stuff in 4K. But like the 2AR video that I did 6 months ago or 8 months ago, whatever, that was just shot on a G7X Canon, you know,
Yep.
Yeah.
camera, and
Top of the line.
edited on iMovie.
hmm
So, and that's not necessarily, my new videos are not necessarily that much better. It's really just the concept and the angles that you're getting, and it's on a $30 Amazon. What's the Amazon brand? Amazon Basics tripod. Like,
Yeah.
it's, but I'll tell you, like, but the audio. So, but there's very little audio. Like, I'm doing
Mhm.
most of the stuff voiceover, and
Yeah.
I'll just use what's the like a Rode Video Mic Pro into just
That's
a
all you need,
$100
man.
a Zoom H1 recorder.
Well, that's what I've always told people when they ask me is like, what do you recommend for a setup? It's like the setup that you know how to use and the setup you can bring with you is the most important setup. So it's you know, yeah, you need a basic mic, and yeah, you should have a good-ish camera, but really the one that you'll use is the one that's most important. So it's not like so many people will think about doing a series like yours and like, well, I can't do that without a Sony A7 and this lens and this sort of production value, but it's like, yeah, you put your camera on sticks and then you film it. I'm sure there's more thinking to it than that, but it doesn't seem like your camera work slows you down, which is really what is the big question on all these productions we're working, like we're
It
building
does.
a car this week,
No,
and it's like,
totally.
it definitely slows you down, but it's how much does it slow you down?
4 times.
4 times?
4 times. 100%.
Okay.
So
it
that
is slowing you
disassembly
down.
video was a half a day for it was 2 days where that should have taken me 4 hours.
Yeah.
Like some of the videos, I'll have a day and then I'm leaving at 5:30 or 6. I'll come back. I'll have to wear the same fucking clothes in the morning so I can. But I mean, there's no tricks. Like I'm in there by myself, you know, just doing it. But it literally takes it takes 4 times as long to do anything. 100%.
Have you found like a nice catharsis from this? Like, do you feel intrinsically rewarded from making these videos? Like, it feels like you're a man of many talents, and this is like one of like you're just the next thing. It's like not that it's replacing your other things, but I feel like you enjoy doing this. Like it shows in the finished content that you like being the one man band making this video content public.
like sharing the things that we do, and I like creating things, and I guess this is another way of creating it. It's just really, it can be like I'll read the comments and stuff, and some people hate my face, and a lot of people
Oh,
like,
yeah.
you know
Don't
what I
worry
mean?
about those
Like,
guys.
it's just it can
Dude.
it's you can have 1,000 great comments, and then like the one hurtful one, it like that hurt. So
You
know what I
gotta
mean?
ignore those guys. You can
Yeah.
only imagine the shit that people can conjure up about me or Corey or Paco. So
Well,
yeah,
what's
kinda-
crazy is that, like, I mean, like the number one rule of the internet is do not read the comments. But on your case, because your channel is kind of like about showing what you're doing, and a lot of people's gonna have questions, so you are pushed to read the comments, and so you have no way around it.
This is what I've realized now after doing this for a few months is like 80 plus percentage of the viewers is just entertainment.
Mhm.
And then, hopefully 10% or more will learn something and maybe apply it to what they do for work or something, or whether it's the right thing that I'm doing or wrong thing that I'm doing, and they'll learn from it. And then probably like 0.5% or something like that just are better at me than it. And they're going to call me out on that one thing.
I love it.
I would like to find someone that has a better resume than you on building car motors, and that is also in a YouTube comment section.
I wish, Sam, we'd have prepared a little bit more for this. We should have dug through his comment well and had some of his fans' questions from his YouTube so we can ask him.
Well, Paco's
Oh,
in there, so
I'm about to get some of the comments.
Yeah, before we get to Instagram questions and all that from our fans listening now, we'll do one more super chat and then another stream of consciousness. But yeah, Paco, if you find any other questions from Papa's old videos that we need to address today that he didn't address, we got another super chat from Marcin Rokiki, maybe. Any chance of a new Supra build or Toyota USA pushing more 8.6 platform? Also, what project was the 2JZ build for in your shop?
Yep. So we talked about doing we talked with Toyota at the end of last year about doing a Supra this year for 2019, and they decided not to do it. So we said, okay, well, if you guys want to continue with the Corolla, then we're fine with that. We always want to have a deal going with them. We love working with Toyota people, and are honestly a couple things. There were two main hurdles. Number one, there weren't any cars available for us to take apart in January and turn into a drift car because there's so few pre-productions of those.
Right.
So our timing was running out and physically being able to build it. And number two, kind of like our jobs. I mean, we've got unfinished business with this Corolla. We really want to win a championship with it.
Because the IM is different enough that you wouldn't consider a championship win with that thing?
We got second with it again. The TC was the one that we got the championship with.
Okay, I forgot that it wasn't in the Corolla. I feel like you've been so close to it so many times now that it's blurry in my mind.
Right. And then the other question he had was, what was the
what was the 2J for in your shop?
Oh, I still can't talk about it because it's not it's not for a FD Pro car.
Gotcha.
It's not for a Supra. It's not. Yeah, it's for someone that's building a car in international.
Yeah.
But
you don't want to talk about? Yeah, sure.
I can't.
Can you believe that Daigo got a 2J in his Supra that fast?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the deal is there. I just saw probably what you guys saw, the Instagram stuff. So it's pretty neat that they're obviously that they're doing that cutting edge stuff. But what are you gonna do? Build the? I think it'd be a lot of fun to build that inline six. I know, but I think it's a better engine. But
how pissed was Toyota? Do you think? Or I mean, Toyota Japan is obviously very different than Toyota America. But it's like, oh, you just took this car and threw in the 25-year-old motor.
Well, I'm sure they knew that was going to happen.
That's not going to sell more Toyota Supras, I don't think. They immediately gutted.
Same way. Yeah.
Do you think? I mean, obviously, when you guys run a Supra, it's gonna, I imagine, have a rendition of the motor that it comes with. But do you think you'll see one in 2020?
From somebody?
From you?
From us?
Toyota willing?
There's absolutely no deal today that says we're going to run that car next year. So
one could be optimistic.
Like, okay, if we ran that car, there's a couple of things. It would either be with the engine that we currently use, which I don't know if we want to do that. I'd rather do the inline six,
right?
That the Supra comes with. I think it's definitely less weight, and it's going to have a better cylinder head on it. then the 2Js are not very good flowing cylinder heads. You got to do a lot of work to those to make them flow okay.
It has factory balance too. So like many Toyota engineers have already balanced the car to be with that amount of weight on that, over those axles. So that's something to consider.
And then our thing is, like, for a team like us, we're a development team. So I'd want to build that engine and share the build process as part of the build. Like, you know what I mean? Like, as part of the whole experience.
Yeah.
So going back to that 2JZ build that you were talking about, it was for somebody else. Do you take private work at your shop, or is that something that you already knew somebody and they're like, hey, Steph, can you put an engine package together for me? Because all your stuff is pretty much just your program, Papadakis Racing. It's not any outside people coming in and paying you a couple bucks to build an engine.
No, it's a partner that we already work with. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. No, we don't. I mean, every car that we've built in the past has either been one that we've competed in. We've built Jonathan Castro's, 86 that he runs right now, and he'll be running again this year. We built that the V8, the Ford Coyote V8 Scion FRS for the RSR guys. RSR Suspension is one of our partners. We built the Scion XB with the 2J engine back in the days. That was for Scion. We built that Corolla, the old 86 Corolla with the Beams motor for Motegi Racing, one of our partners. So this is the problem, is all the builds that we want to do are so time intensive, and charging $100 shop rate for every hour you put in. These are hundreds of thousands of dollars for these builds. And just nobody will pay for those. Yeah. And then so we basically give a deal to the partners that we work with, because it could be fun exposure, right? And it's just fun to do the projects, especially if we have the time to do it. So those are the only times it really comes up. So we built the 2019 Corolla, the one in the beginning of 2018, for the 2018 season. We built the Corolla that Freddie's competing in 2018, and then this year, and then during the summer last year, we finished the demo Corolla. So typically we don't do 2 cars in a year, and last year was pretty stressful. But now we did 2 of them for Toyota.
Do you guys sorry, Sam, do you guys do any type of consulting stuff, or if somebody wants that?
Corey, it sounds like a question for you.
No, well, the only reason I asked that is because there's a lot of people that are getting into the sport and may not know things. Obviously, Steph knows way more than myself, and I'm asking on behalf of myself and a bunch of other people. But it's like, you have a winning recipe, you have tons of experience, because we see a lot of people actually spend more money trying to learn it on their own over and over, and they probably waste more money than if they were to come to be like, man, maybe we can just pay Steph for consulting, or like, you can go to HGK and buy a turnkey drift car and things like that. But do you do any type of consulting or anything like that for private parties, or?
No, not formally. I mean, we have a little bit of our business that we do on some development end, but outside of motorsports. But as far as like within the drifting world, no, if anybody has a question, I'll answer as truthfully as I can. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, we don't have, in my head, are not solutions for everybody. Like, there's a question you have and I can help with it. It might not even be the right answer for you, but I don't want to charge for that. It just is what it is. But I mean, if you look, you got James Dean's team that they don't do anything that we do. I never talked to them about setup or anything like that, and they're out there beating us. So we're obviously not the only ones that know how to make competitive drift cars. And then you've got Matt Field and those guys doing really well, and obviously the HGK guys and JR's team that all do it very differently than how we do it, and they're competitive as well. So I think that if I was to do consulting and really help people, I don't know if that would really be that means to an end to another team. You'd end up just.
Well, it's like, you see a lot of people coming in and trying to develop these new chassis on their own, and they go through a lot of time because they're not experts. And I think people look at you as a guy that has a wealth of knowledge and who's been through a lot more than somebody who's just getting in the first 4 or 5 years of drifting. You've seen it and you experienced it. And that's the only reason why I asked that, is you could save, 5 years off somebody's drift life of development just by your previous experience. And that may be valuable to some people, is having that experience on their sides. And that's why you even see a lot of new teams or new drivers coming in, and having so-and-so as their spotter or so-and-so as their team managers, because they're worth that and saving time and developing on their own of having an expert. But it's like, the only reason I asked that too is because I was in that boat at one time. It's like, well, I didn't really know anybody. And if I had some more resources, I probably went in a different direction off of, if Steph said, hey, do you know what, man, you may want to start considering a Corolla just because there's this for it, it's going to be a big check. And you can drive for the next, then that would sway me a little bit rather than some dude picking up, I don't know, an old RX-7 and doing all the research and building my garage, which is great.
He's shaking your head.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody asked me, I would talk to them. If anybody asked me to do some formal consulting, I would.
It would be no different than like somebody hiring a driver, an FD driver, to go, teach somebody how to drive, is hiring a builder and an engineer like yourself to consult for their team. Even for setup, it's like, can I hire Steph to come out to the track day with me, inspect my car, go through, like, I think that's more the question, is like, that would be the consulting, is here, let's try this. That's why we hire drivers to do driver coaching. Why aren't we doing something like that on the other end? Because it's just as valuable.
Yeah, I don't know if teams have that budget set aside. It's
right. Well, we thankfully have you captivated for at least another few more minutes here, so we might as well, before we get to the Instagram questions, I'm sure half the questions are going to be this anyways. All right. Budget drift car build. Free advice, everyone. 10 grand. What are you going to do, Steph?
It's crazy. We're talking about it this past week. Freddie and I were hanging out and like putting on paper.
Nice.
We want to build one. I kind of want to build one for my page.
Yeah.
Lexus SC300.
Ba-boom!
Okay. Nice.
So you can get one for $1,000 probably, or a couple grand. You would re-drill the front knuckle and to get more steering angle.
Mm-hmm.
You can re-drill the rear knuckles to get a little bit less camber gain, and then find some relatively straightforward coilover setup for it, and you're pretty much done with the suspension.
Yeah, you keep the NA2J. Is that what that was stock
with?
Yeah,
we would turbocharge that NA2J, even with the ugly intake manifold and everything on it.
Yeah.
We get like AEM Infinity with like the plug and play.
Okay.
So it plugs right in. The only thing we couldn't get around on with the cost was the transmission.
Yeah, because they're all automatic.
So you better get yourself the manual one.
Yeah, and you need to you want to use like a good G-force transmission or something, like a good box, because the Supra boxes are really expensive and they actually don't shift very well.
Mm-hmm.
And then even if you had a 5-speed 2J transmission or a 1J or whatever those are, then they're really weak and they can break.
Isn't it an R154?
I think Freddie knew all of the names. I don't know them. He's like, dude, if you got a Lexus SC300 with a 5-speed, those transmissions are terrible. They break right away. And then if you put whatever a twin turbo Supra transmission in, first of all, they're thousands of dollars if you can find them.
Yeah. So
and he said they don't shift very well.
That's the R154, and I think they have
like
faulty. They have faulty forks.
Yeah. So the idea was, so I think it was, and then you have to spend money on safety stuff. You need seats. You got to fabricate a cage, and just the safety stuff. You're probably going to be into the thing, $5 or $6 grand. You need a fire extinguisher system. So
that's why I said 10 grand is the reasonable-ish number, but that still doesn't maybe solve your transmission problem. But if you do everything you said and then spend, how much is a G-force transmission?
$4 grand.
And then G-force is probably like, call it $6 grand plus or minus.
Yeah. So you're at a 15 grand drift car
then. You need a
then.
clutch, you need a flywheel, you need a freaking bell housing adapter, then you need a drive shaft for it. That's the thing, is it just
your cheap drift car has got much more expensive.
Yeah. So we're trying to figure out a way of doing it. But in the world of drift cars, I don't know. I think that. Okay. We're talking about building like a Pro 2. Excuse me. We're talking about building like a Pro 2 level car.
Yeah.
And that would be 20
at this point.
20 grand. If you want to have it just a cheap drift car, it's still the same SC, but just keep the Toyota 5-speed in it.
Yeah, and as long as you don't harass it too terribly.
eBay turbo kit.
Yeah.
So eBay turbo manifold. And spend money on the good turbo. I think get like because the turbo is going to be all the drivability and everything.
Yeah.
So I would spend more money there, and then the engine, you could probably get away with just putting rods in it and not even doing pistons. Head studs,
rods.
stock cams, stock valve train. I mean, is this interesting? Do you think people would
Yeah.
want to watch a build like that?
Yeah, oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Everyone.
That's the most
internet
common
is,
question we get.
Yeah, literally every show, doesn't matter who is on the show, whether it's a driver that doesn't know shit about cars or one of the best builders like you, like everyone always asks, like, what do you recommend I do for a drift car for under 5K or under 10K or whatever? Literally, our number one fan demographic wants to know what to do, because I bet not even half of the people who listen to the show have a drift car. Like, I bet it's probably close to like 10 or 20%. These people are fans, but they want to know how to get into it. In the days where some asshole like me can go out and buy an S14 for under $3,000 that already has pretty much everything you need on it to run it or over. Like, granted, there might be some BMWs are very popular for those people starting out these days, but those times have changed in just 6-7 short years, where you can get in for like $2,000 to $3,000 with a pretty well equipped car off the floor. But granted, you can weld the diff and have a 5-speed on any rear-wheel drive and have a good time to some extent. At least learn a little bit.
What would be a fun thing to do with that car if we build some sort of
invite the
budget
Maximum
car?
Driftcast to give it a shakedown.
We don't give free advice, Steph. What the fuck?
That's what I'm saying. Just invite us to give it a shakedown, and I think we'll be able to do something fun with it, like backwards backflips and.
Fan involvement is always cool. I think there's, if you're trying to grow your channel, it'd be fun to hold some sort of contest where you and Freddie teach 10 of these winners, and the winners are judged by off of whatever criteria, but they spend a drift day with you guys at Willow Balcony, and you guys teach 10 lucky people how to drive the most budget drift car you can build with Freddie. I mean, that's one quick option, because that gets involvement involved. It gets people really happy. People see how to build this car. People get to meet Freddie. They get to meet you, and you're going to be a bigger celebrity than Freddie soon. So
Sam,
it's going to be as big.
The other thing too is just bring out your partners, the Willow, and just go thrash on them. Have partners drive with Freddie for the day.
Yeah,
Isn't there like a missile? What's the big missile car event? Like, is it the overnight thing at Willow, or there's something that they do up in Palm Springs at Grange, I think.
No. Missile cars are becoming less common these days. People are turning their missiles into functional cars. Yeah, the crisis is over. People are turning into real.
You could do a build and raffle. You could do a build and learn. You could do a build and then bring your partners out that have never driven before. There's so much stuff you could do with that. A lot of people are doing the build and raffle. But
so many people that have made like the how to build a drift car videos on YouTube don't have as much authority in the sport as you. And I think just
100%,
you guys doing it would
100%.
be a whole other level of how to prep and build a drift car. So that'd be pretty cool. All right, let's do one more super chat and then Instagram, and then also Paco found some gems from your YouTube comments, Steph, that we're gonna finally get answered. hopefully those guys are listening in on our show. So last super chat here for now. If you guys still have a pressing question and you're listening live on YouTube or want to go to YouTube, you can still get a pressing question in with Steph on super chat. But Logan Cole says, when your kid is ready to drive, what type of car are you gonna build him? Tough question.
Oh man.
You put him in a slow, slow, safe Volvo? Do you build him a sick-ass EG hatch? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, if he wants to drift, it'll be something underpowered. So you can't do AE86s anymore, right? Because they're too rare. So you have to figure out something else.
Can't do S chassis anymore because they're getting rare, I guess.
Oh, jeez. SC300.
There you go. Good answer. But what about as a daily driver? Let's say he shows no interest in drifting or drag racing, as sometimes the fruit falls far from the tree. Like, do you put him in a minivan? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, what do you drive around Southern California? It's a freaking Prius.
I don't know. It doesn't matter. You just get backed into a Foods parking lot,
or something like some SUV that you can carry a surfboard or something in the back or whatever.
Not to blow Toyota too hard, but I really think the new Corolla is a cool car. Like, if someone backs into me even harder in the Whole Foods parking lot and totals my SDI, and I had to get just a regular daily driver car, I think the new Corollas are kind of cool.
Dude, I was just saying, like, it's freaking reverse year right now, where all of a sudden the Corolla's the cool car and the Supra's the one that everybody hates on. What's happening?
Yeah, before we get into the I wanted to ask that as a sidecar to that super question that one of the super chat dudes did, but what's your opinion of the new Supra? So I finally saw it in action at the NASCAR event. They had the pace car as a Supra for the Xfinity Series, and I saw one at SEMA. And we've of course had our finger on the pulse of all the internet, mostly hate for it. But what's your opinion in the long run?
I mean, I haven't physically touched the car or driven it, so I mean, I don't know if the dealers don't F it up and mark the things up too much, then 50 or 60 grand I think is not a lot of money to pay for a fun sports car. But I don't know what I would do with it
But
between my house and work. Just get in trouble.
but
Doesn't it have a shorter wheelbase than even the FRS or GT86?
It's not long. Yeah, it's under 100 inches.
and it's
Which
also
in
like
the world, okay, so to give you some, like, a Corvette, I think is also short though, like 98 inches.
Really?
And our Corolla, which people think is this tiny car, has a 106-inch wheelbase, 105-inch wheelbase. So it's just the small overhangs in the front and the back make it kind of seem like a small car. But we have a longer wheelbase than a Mustang and a Corvette.
Really? That's
Yeah.
crazy.
And an S13 or S15.
Freddie's mentioned on the show, I think last time that he was here, we are talking about wall taps and how much more of a challenge he has than everyone else because of that short wheel or because of that short overhang in the rear. And it's like, Freddie's got to go much harder into the proximity zones than other people because he only has 8 inches hanging off or something.
Yeah, we're working on a feature right now that goes in the back bumper corners. Remember, like Mad Mike and Reese and some of those guys with the short rear bumpers, they had some features. So we're working on that. That's something that we want to do. That's this interesting thing. Like, it has nothing to do with suspension or anything. It's just body work, and somehow it could help us with performance.
Yeah, it is visual in a judge sport, having that visual aspect that'll kind of put you above and beyond. I love also Freddie literally said he changed his driving style because of the conversation we had on the show where I think it was Orlando 2 or 3 years ago, and we said yeah, you won the event, but you look like you pussyfooted the whole way. You look like a bitch doing it, Freddie. And he it hurt my heart because he said yeah, I took that to heart, and I decided to try to drive differently and make it look like I was trying harder because he makes it look so easy, and it shows sometimes where it's oh, he's not going hard, even though he just didn't have that extra inch of momentum or style or whatever it was. And then it seemed like he changed a little bit after that. I don't want to give us too much credit, but that aspect.
We didn't have that much speed at Orlando was the biggest issue. So if you're just trying to keep up with the car in front of you, then you're not going to you're going to try to be as smooth as possible. And that's what we talked a lot about, is just trying to be as smooth as possible to try to keep up, because you can this is the problem I think with drifting and the way that it's currently judged, and just the format is we all want to see these reverse entries and these extreme drifts and stuff like that, but in the competitive situation with tandem, it's not competitive. You're too slow.
Right. Well, we judge a bit of aggressiveness in a positive way, but you just cross that bell curve of aggressiveness, and then suddenly it's a negative thing. And it's like Freddie has tuned and honed his driving in a way that he is now, I feel like, near the top of that bell curve in the aggressiveness scale. Whereas before he was doing very successful judged runs, but the aggressiveness wasn't there. And now we're kind of seeing more of that from him, maybe inspired by the Dean issue.
There's some other stuff also, like the car we run, the Corolla. We will always be at a disadvantage of some of the other chassis because our center of gravity is higher.
Yeah.
And our suspension geometry is just not as good with what we're allowed to do in the rules. So a Corvette or an S15 or a BMW is just going to be a faster car. With all being equal, it'll be a faster car around the track.
But how much were you guys able to create your rear end on that car? Because, I mean, obviously FD had to change something in regards to the rules to allow... Not change, I don't know. They had to adjust to some degree to allow your car to be built in the first place. And obviously they wanted your car to be built because they wanted a major manufacturer and a major team to build this car. But what had to happen for you guys to run that car in the first place?
Yep. So the tunnel that we do with the transmission and stuff is all within the rules. And that's something that teams do. We don't. And then where we actually use a super rear end. And we actually do a similar amount of modifications to mount that rear end in our cross member than the S chassis and all these guys do to put the winters in the back.
Right.
So we're doing similar things there. The only thing that the front wheel drives are allowed to do that the other ones aren't is we notch the cross member and allow axle clearance.
Mm-hmm.
Because we wouldn't be able to make the car rear wheel drive because the cross member doesn't allow the axle to come from the rear end out to the rear wheel. There just isn't a C notch for it. So you physically can't do it. So they let us notch that to allow the axle to get out there, but there's no performance in that. You know, it's
Right.
not like we're changing geometry or, you know, but it's
Yeah.
this factory cross member, and all of the points of which it bolts onto the cross member is all either the factory location or within that 1-inch rule.
Mhm.
So that's
Obviously,
it.
your coil mounting points are not modified, and you know any other benefits that could be gained.
No, I mean S chassis, I believe, are more heavily modified than our car, especially if you have a
Okay.
Winters. You look into
Yeah.
the front hood, and you're not allowed to do anything between the forwardmost and rearwardmost suspension points. But these guys have full-on fabricated front tubs in the front of their cars. You
Right.
can't do that by the you know, the rule, but
Yeah.
it's something that a lot of the guys do.
Yeah.
And you could argue that it is a performance advantage because then you can get more angle and whatever.
Right.
But no, I mean, that's why we have no problem with people coming over and checking out our car, because there's nothing weird. Like this is the situation that we're in. Is at first people thought that we had this front wheel drive car and we're just not going to do well because we have this front wheel drive car that we're starting off with. And then once we figured out how to drift it well, we ended up, people think that we're somehow cheating, or somehow now it's an advantage.
Mm.
And it's not just workmanship and tuning and Freddie's driving that's giving us the
Yeah.
that's
We do have.
doing well.
We love our sports fans, but a lot of them are fucking whiny, and they are very passionate, and they get really upset, and they get really happy, and they have the as Paco and I call it en fuego corazón.
Yeah, well, no, I get it, man.
Yeah.
If I'm into like core drift and I like S chassis and Corollas and stuff like that, and like old school 86s,
Yeah, 86 is not.
and then now it's this
ridiculous.
new wave of like this front wheel drive conversion thing coming in, and whatever else, you know, they hate.
Mhm.
And like these big sponsors and stuff, it looks like it's becoming commercialized and sold out. So, you know, I get it. But my argument against that would be somehow, you know, an LS motor in a freaking 1989 S chassis is somehow more pure. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like those are my Corvette engined Nissan with a Winters rear end all fabricated into the rear cross member
Mhm.
is I mean, it's a hack job of a car. You know, it's not a Nissan thing anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and that's fine, but
Mm.
don't act like you're pure if
Yeah,
what
what
you're
is-
saying is pure is not.
Yeah, what is more pure? You guys are running a Toyota motor and a Toyota car. You just move the drive train essentially.
With the Toyota
Or-
rear end. I mean,
Yeah.
it's and a Toyota rack and pinion. Like there's a bunch of Toyota stuff that we use.
Yeah.
But I mean, whatever, man. That's what's fun about this whole sport, right? Is everybody has their own thing that they root for, and they all have their thing that they freaking hate against. And I'm obviously sounding like I hate against the Corvettes just because I'm jealous. You know, jealous that, you know, it's just a good platform from the start and you don't have to do as much work. But
Yeah, you
Yeah.
always take
Think
on
what
a very
you
difficult
feel is.
platforms.
I don't want to take anything away from Field and those guys because they did a lot of work on that car to make it
Well-
to do they do with it.
Fortunately, this show has a very, very famous segment known as shitting on Chevys.
Yeah.
Wait,
we
so
somehow fallen into the
Yeah,
habit of shitting
feel
on
free to
Chevys,
go
but-
ahead.
Well, I was gonna say it earlier with the electric car. It's like it's unfortunate that they chose a Camaro chassis to run that electric motor. 'Cause it's like we haven't seen a lot of success with that chassis in the sport, and it's like we know that if they put that chassis in like an S15, they put that power plant in an S15. It's like, well, we know the S15 works. Now we can be sure the electric power plant is the problem. But it's like if it fails in the Camaro, it's like, well, maybe it's just because it's a Camaro. We don't know.
That's it'll be exciting. Do you know if that car is coming out in Long Beach?
Supposed
Yes.
Cool. Well, hopefully it doesn't.
to. You sound pumped.
It's not
Cool.
I hope it's exciting, but not as exciting as Frederico's first event.
Yeah.
Beach. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
shouldn't be, as we all hope. And you know, take everything we say with the understanding that we want to see complete success with this electric chassis. We want to see it change the sport in a weird way, but you know, it's tough to see someone do something completely different. And we wish them the most success. But Instagram questions, let's hit them. So Instagram,
Wait, does
YouTube,
Papa have any
Facebook.
YouTube questions?
Yeah, actually,
first?
yeah.
We're
Before
gonna do Instagram
yeah.
questions, but we're also let's intersperse them. Let's mix them up in
Okay.
between.
Yeah.
All right.
I have
Some questions from Papa's YouTube. So, do you want to start off, Paco?
yeah, I
guess?
have one right here. So this one is from V8 Swap Scion FRS.
What
this-
video?
This
Or
is
should we not say?
It's a V8. It's a Coyote swapped FRS. So
Okay.
the first comment says from anonymous user, bet is lost its handling ability. It's just complaining that the car it doesn't handle anymore. How-
And
How
what
do
was
we,
the
video was it
reference
on?
video? What was the reference video? the video
V8
that
again? V8 swapped Scion FRS. So this
That's
is
the yeah. So I did a video where this is a couple years ago, several years ago, where it was just really quick walk around, open the hood on the FRS, you could see the V8 engine. Then I went into the car and then started it. And
Mhm.
so people are asking questions. I get it, I guess. And
somebody
yeah, sure,
saying
it's not going to handle as well, but it freaking does burnouts in third gear. So it's
You
just
know
a
what,
different thing. You know what's important to you.
then
I
somebody
wish you would have responded to that comment with like, "Damn, I didn't think about that when building it." Thanks, thanks for the heads up.
Look, the thing is, with all of these cars, whether you're buying a Supra or an FRS or whatever, who's driving it at its limit? Like, how
Mhm.
rare are you doing that, especially on the street? Like, that's the thing. You know, fuck, man. You know what? I would drive freaking the fastest car that I could find around the streets. But you know what I'd do? I'd get in freaking tickets and end up in jail
Yeah.
right away.
And
So
the streets aren't ready for it because you would be uncomfortable and really unhappy the whole time. And granted, this might sound like an old man thing because when I was like 20, I was like, I'm always going to drive a stick shift. And now I'm thinking like, oh, BMW M Series Tiptronic feels real good in my hands. Like I'm really sick of sitting on the 405 or on the 10 with my 6-speed and like rough clutch and there's only so much lack of comfort you can handle. It's like, yeah, the fastest car would be cool, but practically, how are you going to be utilizing the fastest car in the world in the streets? You know,
right, especially in Los Angeles. I mean, Los
Los
Angeles is
yeah,
freaking parked on the freeway.
it's not ideal to have the fastest car in the world on the freeway.
But I will say this: if you live in LA, then you can take a cruise down the coast on the weekend. You can go up to
Yeah.
there's a bunch of canyon roads that are super fun. So unless you're being an asshole, like you can still have fun and not get in trouble.
Absolutely.
yeah.
But if you also have to drive it to work at 9 a.m., then consider that.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think that's that's the deal nowadays is you have a couple of cars and maybe you drive a Prius or something reliable to work and you have something that you have fun with on the weekend, like an old M3 or something.
All right.
I have another one.
Paco, let's hit it.
Yeah, this is the video is NASCAR transmission tear down. How it works?
Tear down.
Tear down.
Okay.
So
Is that because he cried on it? What was Steph doing? Was he crying all
Just
over the
crying.
transmission?
yeah. So this gentleman with a weird Russian name says, Steph, you're like the bald one from Brazzers, only on the technical side. And
I don't
then,
even know what that means.
and
That's a
then
great-
somebody respond to that comment. He's referring to Johnny Sins, porn actor. But I was going to change the name for Stephan Papadakis. It says, Stephan Papadakis always lubes the drive shaft, so he won't tear up the lip seal. And yes, he uses handcuffs to help keep the shaft from bending. I've seen him tear apart rear ends too. I consider his videos and hope someday I'll be as good as him if I practice enough. He has the only tool not made by Snap-on.
Jesus.
Brilliant. People of the internet.
You're
And that
really
had a
missing
lot of thumbs
gold.
up too. Like apparently it looks like
Yeah,
this porn
people
star
are
guy.
into it.
Yeah. You're missing a lot of gold in the YouTube comments, but not reading them, Steph. I highly recommend you dive in there.
Sounds good, man. I'd rather look like Vin Diesel in the porn guy than I don't know.
Too many people call you Vin Diesel, Steph. Come on. I mean, you got the bald
Not
head.
lately.
Well, you
Yeah.
are the real Vin Diesel.
Yeah, you literally are the real Vin Diesel. That was the best part. Is you're the most real version of that dude, as far as how he's portrayed in the movies. Minus
He-
the whole driving a rotary thing,
Yeah. I never stole any DVDs from the truck though.
or any of those 13-inch TVs that have the
VCR
VCR built into
players.
them.
And he'd be more like a Vin 91 octane, not a diesel.
Ah. All right, Instagram questions.
Instagram,
Really
you guys
strong
get
one
it.
here for Macho Man Randy Sanchez. Would you rather eat hot dogs until you die or eat nothing until you die?
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a loaded question in some weird way,
No,
but I'm gonna.
Nope, no
That's a
point.
great question.
You mean? No,
It's tough.
It's a hard question.
I have to die either way.
Well, you're gonna die regardless, Steph. I hate to, you might be a born again sort of guy, and you might believe in higher power, but Steph, you're gonna die someday.
No, I'll
And
take
the
food.
question is, will you eat hot dogs until you die, or eat nothing until you die?
Hot dog. I'm switching.
All
Good
right,
man.
Hot
That's
dog.
All right,
safe.
and then this is almost like a follow-up question. Beat Farmer 89 says chocolate chip or peanut butter cookies.
Ugh.
Oh, geez. I love them both. I love them all.
Ah,
If I had to
Spider-Man.
choose just one, it'd be chocolate chip.
All right, that's right. That's the correct answer.
That's right.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And then Alika80, common questioner, first-time caller as well. You're a living legend in the import world. You made your name in drag racing. Do you have any aspirations to go back? And then as like a follow-up statement, he says, SFWD and Outlaw FWD are faster than ever. Be insane to see you build a Corolla hatchback. Aloha, Shaka.
Nice. Yeah,
Mhm.
dude. I we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun building all the drag race cars, and we just definitely got a lot of records and stuff. This is the thing, from like 16 years old doing the drag racing street races until, 15 years later, I was going to all these drag racing tracks all over the nation, and we travel all over, and I kept ending up at like a straight piece of asphalt, that was a quarter mile, and I just I got burnt myself out. I just did so much drag racing, and it got to the point, fortunately, where we're making money doing it professionally. Right now, I don't know if there's that opportunity, and because I'm so busy doing what we do with the drift and potentially this low buck drift car build, that I don't know if I don't have the money or time to build a new drag strip car. But I feel like there's people doing it better than I ever did it in the scene right now, in the drag racing scene. They've continued to evolve the last 15 years since I've been at the track, and we could come out and we're just going to get smoked probably. And that's not going to look too good.
Yeah, you don't have your
but-
finger on the pulse anymore. Like you were in it in your youth. You were on the streets doing it, and then you made it legitimate and you did it on the track. But like you were fully, deeply involved forever. And now, if you're just gonna hop back in, it might suck because there's all those secrets that you don't know anymore. And granted, it'd be the same thing as if you disappeared from drifting for 15 years. I'm sure there'd be a very big change of how Formula Drift will be ran in 15 years and what you need to succeed.
Yeah, I definitely want to do a video. I definitely want to bring one of the drift cars to the drag strip and try to run a 9. And I'm going to film it that way I could share it instead of just being there and then telling people with a photo or whatever. I'd like to kind of go through that whole process. It's just finding the right time, and if we break the car, having enough time to put it back together before the next round.
Corey, we didn't have our shit together back then, but it was like 4 or 5 years ago, I think. We had Matt Power's car at Firebird at the time. And I think with no pretense for practice, nothing, he ran like mid-11 or something.
Yeah.
And this is like a 600 horsepower demo car, essentially. And it ran an 11, no problem. Just that LS S14, no nitrous, no boost.
Yeah, back in like 07 or something like that, or 06, I brought my S2000 drift car to the drag strip. And ran, I think it was an 11.8 or 11, somewhere in the 11s. And that was just straight up like a freaking big ass wing on the back. And I didn't change the alignment. It was just the drift tires. So they've got a lot of potential. Like one of our cars now could run a 10, I think, pretty easily. But it's getting into the 9 and getting kicked out because you don't have a license to go that fast is the goal.
Yeah. I love how getting kicked out is still the goal. That's great.
Yeah.
Here's a question.
I can spend a whole episode talking about the S2000 drift car. I'm so curious. I want to know like every in and out of that. My mom has an S2000 that I love, and I would love to have that car someday because I fucking love S2000s, and I want to know all of the pitfalls of that. But we'll save it for
terrible drift cars. Modify everything on them.
Yeah, I want to know all about it on the next time you're on. But for now, we'll continue on these questions.
Here's Tommy Segura. Which is the most important on a drift car setup? The alignment, tire pressure, or actual suspension like the compression rebound? And follow-up question, what is your alignment settings?
So you can get 80% there or 70% there with just getting your spring rates right. and that's not very expensive to get the spring rates right. So if you want more rear grip, you're going to go softer in the rear spring, and you'll usually go a little bit stiffer in the front spring. But make sure you don't bottom out the suspension. So if you have, let's say, oh, I'm going to get a bunch of rear grip and make my drift car super fast, and you put this really soft spring in the back, but now the thing's sitting on the bump stops, you don't have a soft spring anymore. You have a stiff spring, and it's not going to handle very well. And it'll be inconsistent because it'll handle a certain way when it's on the suspension spring, and it's going to handle terrible when it hits the bump stop. The tire pressures typically lower will give you more grip until you start debeating tires and stuff. That's just generally speaking. And then the other one was alignment. If you don't have a very good tire, typically you'll run more toe-in in the rear, somewhere between a 1/4 inch toe-in to like as much as 3/4 of an inch of toe-in, a ton of toe-in. Nowadays, like with the competition tires that we run very little, somewhere in the range of like a 1/4 inch toe-in in the rear, maybe even a little bit less. The most important would be getting your spring rates correct on the suspension and making sure that you have the right amount of travel and that you're not bottoming out the suspension. This is stuff that's super inexpensive because you can get a set of springs for $100, and it's free to jack the car up. And so what you're going to do, super quick, get the car in jacks, or get the car on the ground, see what the ride height is, measure from like the wheel to the fender or something like that. Put the car up in the air, pull your springs out, put the shocks back on, and jack up the tire and see at what point it bottoms out. And then just have your friend video or something the car around the track and see if your tire ever gets that deep into the wheel well, and if it's bottoming out, and you'll know that you need to raise the car up a little bit or use a stiffer spring rate to make sure that you don't bottom the car out.
Interesting.
Damn good advice. Did you guys record that? Did you guys get that?
It's gotta be forever on the internet.
Have you ever did the zip tie around the shock shaft?
Yeah, so the problem with the zip tie around the shock shaft is that when you hit a bump and bottom the suspension, which it's gonna do, it always seems like you're always on the bump stop. So even our competition cars are gonna hit the bump stop probably somewhere on the lap.
It's not gonna be riding on it.
Right, and that's the thing is, typically if you're not hitting the bump stop somewhere on the lap, you could probably go softer and get more grip.
Brilliant.
This isn't like if you're racing mountain bikes and you're setting up the suspension, if you're not bottoming the suspension somewhere, you could probably run the suspension softer, absorb more of the bumps, and be able to get more traction. So this is not a drifting thing. This is just a motorsport. This is just a suspension thing.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. Because a lot of people depend on the zip ties, the whole zip tie thing, as I was one of them.
Because hitting bottom once isn't bad. If it just happens at the maximum moment, just for a half of a second once, isn't terrible. But your median of travel might be very well happy the whole time, but then you bottom once, and then that kind of blows your entire run.
A track like, now we're getting kind of deeper into this, but like a track like New Jersey or Orlando where you come off a bank and you bottom out, or it transitions from the bank to the flat.
Yeah, you can't really use a zip tie for that.
Like we're bottoming out. And if you tune your car so you don't bottom out there, it's going to handle it's not going to handle well the rest of the track. So unless at that moment where it's bottoming out, there's time or performance to be gained, don't worry about that moment. Worry about the holistic suspension setup on the whole lap.
Awesome. Which we've chat on Orlando for a long time on this show, but that is one part that I enjoy, is that it really unsettles everything. The only endearing redeeming part of Orlando is that moment of coming off the bank, because it does unsettle everything and does weird shit to the cars, and that is a fun moment to watch. And it forces you guys to kind of think about things a little bit, maybe.
Last year, the first year with the car, like we had some of the suspension upright started cracking on it. So, because it was bottoming so hard, and we're like, well, we can't fix the bottoming. We've got to make the part stronger. So one of our guys, Mike, we had some steel, and he with his a grinder and a drill made like a reinforcement bracket, and we ran it the rest of the weekend successfully. So that track's always hard on stuff.
Yeah. Wait, anyone got one lined up?
I have a question right here from Kensington Prime. He's asking, Stephan Papadakis, how good of a drift car do you think you can make with Paco's drift van? Also, since Drift Idiot, that's Sam, calls you Stephan Mama Papa Kiss, would you be
Kisses, get it right, dude.
would you be willing to give him advice on how to make a car run and keep running? Because I think only Corey Hosford has a working car.
It's just unfortunate that out of the three of us, Corey's the one with the running car right now. But
I went
post
2
that
years
second
with you
question.
guys bashing me, so I'm
Yeah,
so
I
glad
know.
that we can. So you can dig into him, Steph, if you really
So,
want.
so if you're not
Post
aware,
that.
Paco has the Previa. How would you set up a Previa to drift?
It has an
That's funny.
S14
That's like the
subframe.
premise of Ryan Turk and Chris Forsberg's Motor Trend
drift,
show,
drift.
right?
I don't think
Oh.
even they could get Paco's Previa to drift right. And granted, all their cars are kind of like
Don't-
one and done.
Don't those have like an inline six, like a 2J or something, or 1J? In
No,
them?
it has an inline 4, but it sits sideways like a boxer. So all cylinders point in the same direction. And it's
But it's rear-wheel drive.
It's rear-wheel
so
drive
sick.
with a manual transmission, but I updated the rear suspension, so it's got an S14 subframe, and I got rid of that engine. So I'm about to. I cut the whole floor, and I'm putting a 2J, or I mean a 1J on it, but it
You're
did okay
serious?
for a very
Corey just rolled his eyes so hard.
underpowered.
real
I'm
thing?
laughing so hard.
This is a real thing?
Yeah.
You never
Do you have
seen
Yeah.
pictures or something on your Instagram or something?
bro?
He's got
Yeah.
too many cars, Paco. We don't need to get.
Yeah.
You seen that?
No, I love it.
Oh,
It
thank
sounds like you don't need advice. It looks like you already did it.
Yeah. Well,
Well-
it doesn't. You see, so the photos you see in are very select moments where it's not ascend forward accidentally.
Paco,
So-
where's the subframe at?
let me see if I can show him the subframe right
No, I'm just
there.
laughing. There it is.
Wait, it's tube chassis in the rear?
It's all tube in the rear.
It's not FD legal if you couldn't tell.
Definitely
yeah, this
not.
is for 2020.
Dual.
I've got a weird question.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the question that people want to know. Why spend so much time and effort on a minivan?
It's like, I mean, so funny that you ask. So I used to have a C5 Corvette, and I was like,
was too
I need,
Easy
I
or
need,
what?
I
Yeah.
need something cool. This is
You need
before.
something cool.
Yeah.
C5 Corvette wasn't cool.
What pulls more chicks, the minivan or the C5?
Oh man, I can fit 7 on the minivan.
Yep, that's true. And he's always got such a long queue of babes
Oh,
ready.
they're lined up.
Which
You mean the Corvette, rolling up in the Corvette with like the fingerless black leather gloves that have like the check
The
checker
mesh.
flags on them? Doesn't pull the
You
chicks.
better believe he has them. And it's cut off shorts. And they pull on the door handle and like, is this the same handle from a 95 Cavalier? And he's like, yes, it is.
Yep.
Not a problem.
Look at that
oh,
stud.
Wow, Paco. that's gonna be my new phone background.
What does that say in Japanese on the side?
Fujiwara Tofu Shop.
Oh, because it's got the
initial D
Rocket Bunny
reference.
color, or not the
Initial D.
Initial D. Yeah.
the initial D color. Oh, it's
Yeah.
that panda something.
Yeah. It's called, the Panda Toretto.
It's supposed to, yeah, like it even says Toretto.
If you couldn't tell, it gets confused a lot of people that didn't know if it's an A86 or a Toyota Previa. The best part is I still see so many of those on the road in California. It's always an older Asian woman that is driving one. but
There's
it
a
still
lot of
exists.
them in California, yeah.
Well,
I'm-
if you're looking for older Asian women, that's a good way to
Yeah.
get advice. You know, I got the same minivan.
Well,
I'm just
Alright.
laughing because I watched Paco's fab work into this thing, comparing to what Steph can produce versus what I watched Paco produce.
What are you
And-
talking about? Paco's fab work looks
Let me give you an
incredible.
example. When you give Paco any type of cutting device, he just goes wild, and you can't stop a man like Paco with a cutting tool. He'd be the one that would go and be like, "Oh, that's an inch too far. Hold on, let's back out and retry that again."
No, that's me. You know,
Oh, he
like,
did.
There you
you
go.
know, like that was that for years. Like that was my thing in the old drag racing days. Like it was just fucking cut the thing until it fits, and then just weld this thing back together so it'll run. And then I started making friends with Sean Carlson, the late Sean Carlson.
Uh-huh.
And he was master fabricator, and he's the one that really kickstarted, or like not kickstarted, but like kicked my drag racing up into the next level. Was when we worked together on that yellow Civic drag race build, and he was the one that said, no, you can't just have a good engine, you've got to make it look good too. And he was the one that spent all the time on the fabrication and everything. I'm the one that built the engine. I was always a perfectionist on the engine, but it was just about the engine. Let me just get this thing in here and go to the track.
Right.
I don't care how it looks. I just want to go fast. And he's like, no, you got to have both.
Wow.
God bless him for
Dude,
teaching
such a
you
cool
that,
story.
because now you've got one of you've got the I don't know the comparison to make, but you've got one of the most beautifully well organized drift cars and teams. Like, it's great when I walk into your trailer and it's like everything's organized. It makes my OCD brain happy seeing your videos in the shop and all that. It has the right amount of organization, and it just gives me that tingle because I can't stand dirty engine bays or dirty setups in the trailer.
Yeah, well, there's a balance there, right? So I try to be. I'll just tell you my philosophy real quick. Like, my buddy Sean was 110%er. Everything was 110%. He went above and beyond, and everything was amazing. The problem was he never finished anything on time or completely.
Yeah.
Because you can only achieve 100%, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I try to be like a 90%er, and
Yeah.
then let that 10% that you don't know is going to come up, and then you can you can finish on time, on budget.
I've had to struggle with that same thing many times with videos being released. It's like there's always so much more I can do, but then you just kind of got to let them go and let it happen, because otherwise it will be past deadline and clients are mad and everyone's mad. But
Yep.
all right, a couple more questions. Imperium Motorsports is one I enjoyed reading. Do you use Honda Bond or any other Honda parts lubricants in building drift cars?
Who's this from? Is this somebody I know?
Imperium Motorsports.
Imperium
Is that one of
Motorsports.
our friends? I forget.
Okay, so we used to use Honda Bond but now for half the size of the Honda Bond, this is silicone, for
Yeah.
sealing up oil pans and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's like $20-something for a tube of this, and it's half the size of like a $6 Permex Ultra Gray.
Honda
So-
Bond knows that everyone uses their shit for every manufacturer of car, and now they're capitalizing on it.
I guess I don't
Those
freaking know,
bastards.
but it's great. It's a great product.
Yeah.
But now I just use the Ultra Import Gray or whatever it's called, or Ultra Gray, and stuff still doesn't leak, and it's a fraction of the cost. So
Take that, Honda Bond.
I used to
Cheapen your
use
shit.
that. And then Honda on the S2000 thing, they had some clutch releasing issues with the S2000 at one point, and they had a service bulletin on it, and they came out with this, I think it's called urea grease, that goes on the splines where the clutch
It's a weird name.
disc rides,
Yeah.
and it lubes that clutch spline up, and we actually use that on the splines of all of our input shafts.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Urea grease. So
urea grease. The Honda guy probably knows. I don't know.
yeah.
Sounds,
Yeah,
like, sounds like it
comes in,
smells like
it looks
piss.
like a little bit big, like chapstick jar, and you.
yeah.
One of our one of our main tech guys that comes out to the events, Mario, is a master Honda technician.
That's sweet.
So for like the last 20 years or whatever. So he's the one that told me all this stuff.
All the secrets.
Yeah.
And then we did answer the question. Marcin Rakiki got another one in there in the super chats. He said, so possibly a GR Super for the 2020. Would you develop the B58? It's like a modern 2JZ, just aluminum, so must be lighter. But yeah, you said that if you did get a Super for 2020, hypothetically, you would try to develop that motor unless something else presented it, right?
Totally. Yeah. It wouldn't be a 2J car.
Yeah.
We not that there's anything wrong with the 2J, but I
Yeah.
think that we could do a better. I think that B58 could be a better engine. This is the thing, though, is we're back to development again, right? So we've got to make stuff that doesn't exist. We've got to test it out. Now
There's
we're the team that is maybe
years of
blowing up
growing
engines again, and we're everybody's hating on us because we're hurting
You're at
engines,
the top.
breaking engines and swapping them after qualifying. So
When you're at the top, there's only one way to go, man.
yeah, but it'd be fun.
Yeah.
I mean, is that there's conversations that it's basically these BMW parts and stuff like that. Do you think that that's what do you guys think about it?
I mean, I haven't owned a BMW before, but I feel like the only complaints that I ever really heard of and saw from the BMW guys, for the most part, was broken window motors and electronics failures. I feel like, by and large, the power plants are successful. Chelsea Denofa might have another thing to say about that. Granted, he was pushing them way too hard in the time that he's running BMW power plants. But I mean, I don't know. I guess someone will buy the new Supra and they will find out pretty quickly here how reliable these motors are. And there's so much love for the 2J because it's got its own personality, it's got its own spirit by now, and they're cheap and they're effective and has its own problems that people have just kind of grown to adapt to and realize. And I bet if people give this new motor a chance, it will make people happy. But I don't know. It's not.
Well, the thing
It's
is, I don't think it's just the motor. I think it's more the cosmetic. The appearance of it is obviously the Mark IV Supra
it's
is an
never
iconic
gonna
car.
be an A80 Supra, and that's gonna piss everyone off because
Yeah.
it will never be that
No,
car.
but I get it. Like this is my theory on it. Is back in the '90s when the 300ZX came out and the Supra came out and the RX-7 came out and the Subaru SVT, or what was the Subaru
Yeah,
supercar?
Paco's got one. Don't worry about it.
I'm sure he's
Yeah.
so, but that was the thing, right? Is these companies were saying like, this is the craziest stuff that we can build. Like, check out our engineering, and that's what all of us are used to that grew up in that era
Yeah.
of the brand that maybe that turned us into liking that brand was seeing them do that, and it's a different world that we live in now, and I don't know if any manufacturers are really putting that kind of effort into it. And Toyota, maybe had an opportunity, said, hey, we can bring out a Supra with partnership with BMW, or we don't bring out a Supra.
Mhm.
And
But
I,
it
mean,
doesn't
I don't
seem
know what
like- It
yeah,
doesn't seem like their Halo car. It doesn't seem like their best and brightest. This isn't a prime example of the best engineers we have doing the best things they could do. They're like, well, BMW made a Z4. Let's change the interior, some exterior fake vents, and put a badge on it. I know that wasn't so limited as that, but it definitely feels that way to some people.
yeah, I haven't heard an official story. So I mean, all we're hearing is chatter from the internet at the moment.
Yeah.
Because Toyota hasn't come out, at least in some big way, and told us the whole story on it officially. I haven't seen it, and I work with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I bet still we're going to see, if I had to guess, we're going to see a possibly Rockstar livered Supra in 2020 ripping some fat smoky
Maybe.
Bernies around Long Beach in a year with Freddie behind the wheel. Just predicting.
Maybe, but look, dude, like, don't discount the Corolla, because
I'm not.
they're
I've
gonna
discounted
sell-
the Corolla in the
they're gonna
past, and I was
sell
very
10
wrong.
times as many 10 times as many
Why?
hatchback Corollas,
Yeah.
and the people that watch Drift are more likely probably going to buy Corollas than
100%.
Supras. So
Hmm.
I think we might be in the right car, in the right sport.
Yeah.
But then the other argument would be, look, I'm 42 years old, and I've got a lot of friends that grew up that still watch Drift and some of this other motorsports, that they got money for Supra money nowadays.
Exactly.
And things have changed. I mean, I think there's it's a broad demographic of that watches Drift,
Right.
and even that might not watch Drift, but it would be cool to see, maybe a Super Drift around. So
Exactly.
yeah, or that engine being built,
Yeah.
and getting
mean, I
inspired
just-
to build a drag car from it or something.
I disagreed with the rumored idea of why Supra wasn't an FDs, because it wasn't the right demographic. And granted, this is just a rumor I heard, but it's like they were gunning for a higher demographic. They were looking for Porsche buyers and something bigger than the Drift demo, which is largely a younger Corolla buyer. Which, yeah, you're going to sell a lot more Corollas and Supras, but it's the aspirational thing. It's like, I hope to buy that someday.
Right.
And
Well, it's also creating that hero car, right? These kids that go to FD events saying, I want that Rockstar Papadakis Supra.
Mhm.
And they may grow up and say, I want a Corolla.
Can't
I'm
afford
like,
that, but I'll still buy a
Yeah.
Corolla, or I'll still
Yeah.
buy an FRS or a GT86. Like, I'll still buy a GT86 because I can make it my own little Supra, and that's why I bought my first WRX, because I couldn't afford an STI. And it's like, you know what? But I'm gonna buy a base WRX because I want that STI someday. And now I got that STI. And I'm like, this car sucks, dude. I need a Supra. And then the new Supra isn't what I want necessarily, but maybe the next one will be. But I don't know. It's a tough thing to please all the nerdy car guys, and you're never gonna. So maybe don't even try. That's probably what they were thinking at. It's like, you know what? We're gonna piss off the car guys no matter what. Let's just make some money doing it.
yeah.
All right. Any more questions for?
Yeah,
Steph?
there's one more than a question. It's a comment,
All
and
right.
it's a super
get that
comment on
comment.
YouTube from Robert Daffino, and he says, "I love your vids."
That's
Aw, Robert, you sweet boy.
it. Awesome.
Drop your vids. Well, that is a beautiful note to end on. There's no negativity in your comment section on YouTube whatsoever. Don't look to check that. It is 100%
Yeah.
true.
Clean. We went through it.
Actually,
can't wait to
I
see
went
you.
through it, and it's like like you say, like 98% of it is positive. Everybody's like, oh, please keep keep these videos coming. That's very informative. There's a couple
might be the
a
most-
couple people like actually like demanding, like, I'm sorry to sound a little demanding, but can you like post more often? So there is a demand.
One of the most liked people on YouTube then.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Steph, as
something like-
always,
Yeah.
for spending time on our
Absolutely.
show. And we can't wait to have you back on again. Always a pleasure. And we will see you in just a few weeks at Long Beach. And we hope to see you guys inch up just from
Are-
that second place position, get that first place one maybe this year.
Are we gonna
Figure
see
out
you
a
at
way to
Grid
beat
Life?
James.
Pardon me?
Are we gonna see you at Grid Life?
Yeah. Yes. We'll be at the one at Road Atlanta.
Awesome.
Did you already debut that demo car? I forget. Or was he in the FD car still then?
That was in the FD car, and we will be at the FD car again at Road Atlanta.
Oh, really?
In the
What's
comp-
the demo car? The demo car is just doing brand things. Are you doing like Toyota events and other stuff, or do you have other demos planned for that car?
So the demo car is Toyota's vehicle, and they kind of choose where it goes. So sometimes it goes to shows, and sometimes they do like dealer meetings or maybe a Corolla event or something like that. They give ride-alongs to press. It's not ours to choose what to do with, but we run it for
Gotcha.
them.
Okay.
And then at Grid Life, Rockstar has a big involvement with the Grid Life.
Hmm.
And so we want to be in our Rockstar car at that event.
Right.
And the demo car is wrapped Toyota Motorsports. So it doesn't
Wow.
it doesn't work for us.
Yeah, which we
Yeah.
love when we're announcing it that you guys, as we blew up at Atlanta, because you guys are like the only ones running your actual FD car out there, which blows our minds. We
Oh,
we
for sure.
we dig it.
Yeah, I mean it's all right, Freddie, go out there. Don't crash into anybody. But I guess if you that was, dude, honestly, we talked about this a bit and we're like, what would be fun to do at Grid Life? And Freddie's like, look, I just want to go out there and drift the comp car against or with just the guys having fun, because how often do they get to drift against actual competition cars
Right.
or get to see that? So that was kind of the whole point. And we just want to keep doing that. Like, we try not to, I mean, all this stuff is pretty serious, because
Yeah.
there's money involved and manufacturers and sponsors and everything. But
It's easy to not have fun doing it. So you
like,
gotta
look, I love to build cars, and Freddie
Yeah.
loves to drive cars. And sometimes with all this competition stuff, it's hard to see that. But that's what the truth is.
Well,
Yeah.
as you're talking about this, we had a super chat pop up from Stay Sideways saying, "What does happen if Osbo were to ride off the car?"
We're gonna have a busy month freaking trying to build another one. So
have a long talk and
you know what we would do? No. I already know the answer to that. We would get the demo car from Toyota and run that
Really?
one. Because
Awesome.
it's
Yeah.
built to exactly the same spec. It's essentially a sister car. So it was designed to be a second car. Like if we ever had another one of the Toyota drivers want to step into it,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean that was even the talks. Like if we were to run a Supra, who would end up in the Corolla?
Right.
So I'll leave it with you guys to think about that. But that's Corolla doesn't want to. If the Supra's out there, we still want to run a Corolla and drift. We don't want
Sure.
Corolla to abandon drift,
No.
right? And these are great cars to run. So these are all stuff that has to be worked out that you don't really work out in public. But I want to share with you guys as much as what's going on behind the scenes.
That's
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
And
Cool.
then Stay Sideways also says best luck, cheers. And Max 523 whatever said something rude that we're not going to say. Something about Sam being 70 according to his hair. Whatever, dude. Steph doesn't have any hair and he's still cool. So fuck you, Max. and yes, with that we leave you. Thank you so much, Steph. We'll see you in
Yep.
what 2
2
weeks?
weeks.
Almost
2 weeks.
Exactly. Can't wait, man. We will see you and Freddie and the rest of your team, and
you
we
guys.
will look out for YouTube videos. What's the channel name again for you on YouTube?
Papadakis Racing.
Papadakis Racing.
Yeah.
simple.
YouTube.com/Papadakis Racing.
Perfect.
Cool, man. Well,
We'll
thank you
see
so
you
much
there.
for your time. We'll see you in the championship hunt, and talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Okay,
Hey,
bye.
thank you, man. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye. There you go. All right, it's
All
now
right,
you guys.
He's gone. I didn't want to say this in front of Steph, but fuck you, man.
What?
He's
No,
reached
come on,
600.
Sam. Watch your mouth, dude.
Is it just me, or is Sam now 70 according to his
Look at
hair?
his hair.
I don't know. Am I?
Maybe like 68.
I don't know why he has to be
I
mean. That
think-
was mean.
About to
I'm
turn
just
It's
into
the green screen
69.
that's messing it up, Sam. That's all it is.
Well, you can't tell
Ah.
where the cheese topping of this cheesy gordita crunch starts and where my hair ends. Is the problem.
Yeah, It's the green screen that's throwing it off.
Yeah, that's what it must be.
The cream screen.
Let me give people a taste of what you guys look with. Oh, there you go. That's
How boring is this now? Look at this. Hey, this is me and Sam.
your
We're
hair looks
partying
just
in
the same
space.
though.
We're just partying in space.
Not a big deal. Well, now that Steph's gone, we
Back
can
in space.
start the show in earnest. All right, here we go.
Hey, it's me in space now. Looks like I'm coming up upon Corey's Uranus, and it's filthy.
Wow.
Corey, how's that?
That wasn't bad at all, Sam. It sounds like you were on a space shuttle.
What you got?
Which
Bitch.
one was that?
I don't know. Don't worry about it.
I'm gonna find it. Hold on, real quick.
Is it really that completely out of style? Just like to use like the hand and attention.
Yeah, that is.
Ah,
Paco, by the way, you did a really good job in the controlium room today.
Thanks,
Really proud of
man.
you.
Paco destroyed
I'm
the
struggling.
control room.
You're
tonight.
pulling up that Steph video when we're doing it, and during the drift draft, we got to be on that.
Dude,
by the way,
and
'cause-
you
yeah.
were, dude, and Paco, you did that on the fly, and we were never ever able to get shit pulled up on the fly like that. I give you some serious props.
I mean, like.
Hold on, I'm getting a transmission.
Transmission. Paco, this is the captain speaking of Space Ding Dong. I would like to congratulate you on the controlium. You did very well manning that unit with your little tiny hands.
Thanks. So,
And, your little hands were capable of moving that fast. Oh, we just dodged a comet. Oh, and it landed right into Sam's butt. Wow.
thank you, Captain Ding Dong.
How was that, Sam?
You guys are ridiculous.
Looks like a fat baby. Yep, that's right. Looks like he's only about 2 feet tall, but he looks like he weighs 300 pounds back of his jersey. Looks like, yep, it's Hosford. He's got a tiny baby baseball bat out here. It's the shortest baseball bat I've ever seen. He's carrying 2 hot dogs in his mouth, not in his hands. I can't believe how deep they are. Well,
Yeah.
looks like he's going to go to the plate, and he... Nope, can't make it. He fell over, and that's the end of Hosford's career in baseball. Goodbye, baby.
Is it? Have you guys? Did you guys told?
Was that
Told?
good?
it was
That was
perfect.
good.
You guys told Chris Stewart from Grid Life that the drift draft is going to be 100% audio effect like that the entire episode.
No.
Oh, I wish
mean,
it
we can take
was.
a while, but you know that we gotta have a strong controlium presence because the idea for the drift draft is essentially that we're going to be letting a lot of Grid Life potential applicants, not potential applicants, actual applicants, but potential approved applicants.
Yep.
We're going to be calling them on the show and seeing if they got what it takes for the gridding life. And we're going to see photos of their car. 'Cause essentially the problem that Grid Life has is that a bunch of dudes want to drive it, obviously,
For
because
sure.
it's an awesome event. But we got to make sure that the cars are up to snuff because they can't have cars breaking down because there's only like 3 or 4 sessions a day. And we got to make sure that the cars can handle it and they're not going to leak oil over the track. We also got to make sure the dudes got a chill vibe, you know?
Yep.
So we're gonna see how chill they are. But they send us a bunch of photos of their cars interior and exterior, and we got to make sure the cars are up to snuff. So we got to have a hardcore dude on the controlium. I know Big Ball's up to the task, but Paco, you're a controlium daddy now. You know what it takes. You got the flashlight attachment, batten down.
That's
tight.
what's keeping me like pretty much logged into the mainframe via
You're
via
logged-
flashlight.
You're docked into
exactly.
the mainframe, as one might say.
It's my
Yeah.
it's my third arm.
Just controlling it.
Yeah.
All right, let's send them off into the night. Who do we got to thank, boys?
We have to thank AM Intakes. Corey, show that
Ooh.
hat. Show that new hat. Look at that.
Yep.
Actually, no, I have
Wow.
the
Shiny hat.
I have the new hat.
Fresh and clean, Sammy.
And
We also
And
have to
then-
thank
there's a new hat.
Grid Life.
Boom.
Grid Life, our
Grid
new
Life.
buddies.
Always
We're
Grid
gonna
Life.
be
Hey, dude, they're out
doing
there
that
doing the
Drift Draft.
Chop Top Challenge right now, which
We're
I'm
missing
super
out.
jealous. If you haven't, go to Grid Life's Instagram and check out what the Crop Top Challenge is.
Crop top.
Be- Crop Top, Chop Top, baby.
Mhm.
And then last,
You can also check out what Corey likes to call, which is like the inner tube top. And that's what
Yeah.
happens when he wears his pants too tight. And then
Yep.
the fat leaks out over. That's called the inner tube top.
yeah,
check
or a
that out.
fupa. We call
Fupa
it
is
the fupa.
another-
Yeah, that's
Yep.
another one. Or front butt. There's a couple terms scientific terms that I usually don't want to go through. And then we got to thank Link ECU. Thank you, Link ECU, for keeping the show afloat.
Hey,
You
Link
guys need-
ECU, thank you.
Help with any type of engine management support, Link ECU will get you the little extra squeeze you need to make the people pleased.
Wait, so
How's that?
That's
So-
an official copy from them. Is that what they said that they wanted?
I just kind of threw that out there.
Wait, so
I
so-
Little
pulled them-
extra squeeze to make the people pleased. Is that what they want you to say?
yeah, that's
So
on
according-
all their boxes.
so
now.
according to
All right.
Steph, it's a SC300
Yep.
with a turbo and a Link ECU. Boom,
Yep,
done.
perfect. And then obviously the Patreons. We got to thank the Patreons.
Which, by the
You
way,
guys- which,
we have
what?
a new Patreon.
What?
Oh.
Yes, sir. And I had him right here, but for some reason the window closed down, so I'll bring him up in a second. But
Sounds like you ripped the
Patreon.
there in the control. Yeah, I might take back everything I said. Why don't you plug into that flush a little harder? Or better yet, clean it out. I bet it's getting a little dirty
new
after.
Patreon, Hayden Taylor.
Christensen, you might know him from episode 1, 2, and 3 of Star Wars.
What?
He had the high ground.
Yeah, that's right. And he
No, he had the low ground. And then
Hayden
Kenobi.
Christensen.
Hayden Taylorson.
Hayden Taylorson.
Hayden Taylorson. Thank you
Christensen, Thank you, buddy.
for being a new Patreon,
brother.
bruh. It's a very
And,
very nice amount, by the way. It ends with a 69, of course.
Paco. What is
He
that?
knows. He knows.
All right. Well, we will shut it down. We have our very special episode.
Oh,
I'm not sure we're gonna have as a guest next week yet. I'll be in NASCAR country. I'll be in Charlotte with
Do we
Joey
have a-
Logano.
Do we have a confirmation which day we're doing Drift Draft?
April 1st is the tentative date right now. It may change based on we might have a very special guest host on that one. Maybe a little boy named Swan. You ever heard of him?
It's like a
So-
majestic.
Yeah, Swan Diver.
Yeah, we're working out the details because we don't want to be too mean to the dudes that aren't accepted. But Nick Swan doesn't give a fuck, and he will say whatever is
He will say
necessary.
whatever he wants. Yep.
but yeah, so we're gonna do a drift draft potentially April 1st. Check that out. We'll also be doing a regularly scheduled pre-FD show that week, and of course, as we mentioned earlier at the top, FD halftime show confirmed. We will see you in Long Beach in just a few weeks. That's all I got for now. I'm gonna
Awesome.
go pack.
Corey,
That's a wrap.
that's a wrap. Give us some bars.
Sam, here I want to do a little.
There you
Oh, Sam, go ahead. Hit me with some poppy. Hit me with some poppy lyrics on the way out to that.
Okay.
Go for it.
Wow, that didn't work.
Oh well, that's it. That's what Sam has.
Wait, what do you mean?
You broke up. You couldn't hear you, Sam.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I'll do
Can
it
you hear
again.
me now?
I can
Nope.
hear
Oh,
you perfect.
sorry.
Yep.
I clicked hear my voice.
Baby,
Oh.
let me hear those words.
Ooh.
Let me
Nice.
hear those beautiful words.
Ooh.
Corey,
Ooh.
Is that
kiss my butt.
Teen Alvin?
Yes, Sammy.
Oh,
What you telling me, Sammy?
Telling you.
I'm telling you.
jeez. All right, guys.
All right,
Now,
guys. We will be seeing you guys next week.
have a
Stay
good
tuned.
night, and we'll see you guys on the next one. See you on Drift
Have
Draft
a good night, Sammy. Have a good night, Taco.
See you next Tuesday.
or Monday. All right, bye.